Okay, welcome everyone. It's about 8 o'clock. We should be getting started here fairly soon. As always, if anyone would like to come up and speak onto the dais, let yourself be known now, or at any time, really. It doesn't matter. We're all just having a little fun here. So, anyway, I hope everyone is welcomed to our first time on Tuesday. As everyone knows, perhaps you saw the poll, but we decided to move this space to Tuesday as to not interfere with Dragons and football season. So we may come back to Sunday sometime in the future. We'll see. Perhaps after football season, or we may just stick with Tuesday. I don't know. We'll see how this all works out. I am now joined by Alex. I see he's up on co-host. How's it going?
Oh, doing well. There's been kind of some things going on with the Twitter space and uranium and everything. So I kind of my take on it is this. Chapman, we appreciate everything you're doing, the diligence, the deep dives. So, and I'm sure you're shocked at as things go by how many people are not doing this, and it probably drives you absolutely nuts that people don't do this kind of diligence. But that's just the way a lot of people invest and their personality type and their style. Again, we're really happy to have you, digging in, and you went a little bearish or bondish. I missed the last little one we had, but you're holding cash, so you kind of got a little bit of ire from the community. I haven't, I kind of let the dust settle a little bit, but I kind of want to hear a little bit from you. Again, you said you're holding cash, and there's not really anything wrong with that. If you want to hold cash, it's up to you. Just kind of talk about that a little bit if you can for to start off with.
Okay, don't take this the wrong way, but I am 90% cash, and I feel like I am 100% living rent free in some people's heads because of it. And look, I don't want to influence people's decisions. At the end of the day, I just like to think that I provide the information, and I just let people do what they want to do with that. Um, Purpose of proven reserves, the purpose of the kind of due diligence that I do is not to tell you when to buy or sell. Really, at the end of the day, it's just providing information and hoping that that makes you a better investor. Now, I know that this has sort of drawn the ire of some people in the fact that, yeah, I have sort of publicly said, yeah, okay, I'm going cash here, folks. I actually remain resolute in that decision. That has not changed. In fact, that's probably getting stronger by the day. I know that that may not be what some people want to hear, but for me, the die is cast, and I've made my decision there, so I'm gonna live with that. Um, there are certain events that may happen that may lead me to come back into the market. Um, at the time being, or for the time being, I'm not sure if and when that's going to happen. I mean, I guess, part of this is, publicity is publicity, I guess. And it's just, it is, at the end of the day, it is bringing attention to me. I have had some people in the community that have, I guess, sort of vouched for me a little bit. And that was kind of welcome. But for me, at the end of the day, I'm just, I'm feeling good. Honestly, it's always a tough decision, but I mean, the whole reason I announced that I was even doing that was because I felt like I should. I think I didn't want to. I expected that there was going to be a sell off that Friday, and it sort of turned out I think there was, or at the very least we did have that sell off. Um, and I didn't want to announce on Sunday like, oh yeah, by the way, everyone, I just sold everything. It's like, oh, why didn't you tell us, Chapman? Like, well, sorry. Uh,
And
so
kind of also about the again, I don't know the answer to this, but the post about Japan having more inventory.
okay, well, the Japan post, you know, for me, I'll be honest. The pushback from that was a little bit surprising. Mostly because some of the pushback was that everybody apparently knew that Japan had 10 years of inventory. I didn't know that. And I would be shocked to know how many people could honestly say, "Oh yeah, I knew that Japan had 17,000 metric tons of enriched uranium." That was common knowledge. Okay, sure. Um, and again, that wasn't necessarily, you know, I wasn't trying to tell people to sell, but I was saying like, look, people, this is not necessarily like somehow thinking like $90 uranium is going to happen tomorrow just seemed to be a bit far fetched to me. And everybody can do, what they want to do. I mean, obviously, if you're holding right now, if you're watching the market and you're holding, then you're going to have plenty of time to sell if the market does turn south. So I'm not telling everyone just, hey, go out and just go sell tomorrow. Because, really the way that this goes down is if the hedge funds, you start getting margin calls and the people that basically sort of, let's say, actively trade Cameco, and you can see them because they are, they're the even shares, like the 100 share lots, and then you start seeing retail come in, and those are like the 6 or the 37 or the 92 shares. Um, and you'd see that, and basically once the bid stop, I mean, if you have a liquidity event there, and the people that basically buy Cameco, and just keep that float, keep that liquidity there, they pull back just a little bit, folks. I mean, that thing's gonna fall out like a rock. There's not enough retail money to keep that thing hoisted up. So, I mean, that's the only thing that I'm seeing. But um, as far as the Japanese go, I mean, it just seems like I don't know. Everything is just the gun's being fired, and it's like what are we racing towards again? I don't know. So,
So again, there was also another uranium space on last night. So
mm,
it was kind of the I don't know the uranium illogicals or whatever you want to call them. Corgi, 100 K, and then Bearded Trader. So again, they do their thing. They have a podcast, and
I know.
I like them. So I'm a lot like them. I'm just one of those like, hey, I have a bunch of them early. It's just hanging out. I'm not doing, like deep dives. But yeah, I'm kind of like them, and they had very successful one yesterday. Um, they had two CEOs on, and they had some of the same people in this room. But if I could bring Uranium Cranium up in just a second,
Oh boy.
but he kind of made a post and said, "Hey, these are where the smart people are at, and those people are dumbasses." Um, but again, that's not the type of energy I'm trying to cultivate. I don't think that's the type of energy Chapman's trying to cultivate. So again, we're just trying to I'm here to have a conversation about it because I'm just like way deep in it and I like it. But Uranium, go ahead and tell us your take.
Thanks, Alex. So yeah, I mean, um, compared to this space, that space was not an intellectually challenging discussion. That is, kind of almost objectively demonstrable. So that's fine. I mean, I didn't go there look, uh, you know, the actual interpretation of the Japanese that Chapman couldn't provide. I went there just to really have fun and support those guys. I was there, and I was doing my stupid thing that I do that entertains me at least, and doing my little emotional mode cons or whatever you call it. But and I had no problem with that. Um, but the post that I made today, and if things, but the post that I made today urged people to come to this space was just to get people to come to this space. And if it had to be pointing that out and taking a little fun at those guys, then I'm going to do that. Because the reality, Alex, is that a lot of the things that those guys do are actually, it's deeper than what you're saying. It runs deeper than that, and it can be hurtful to some people. I find that they come out like hyenas to attack Chapman, and that's they punch below the belt and they gang up, and then they get their little henchmen to come around, and it's all of a sudden it's 20 to 1. And the thing about me is that where I grew up, there were bullies in town. It is gang, and there were bullies in town who fought in packs. I took them on. It didn't matter if it was 5 to 1 or 10 to 1. And that brings out something very, very deep in me. I will go all day, all night. I will miss work. I will leave my children hungry if I find that people are bullying somebody else. And it goes to a point where you're, I, uh, I had someone uh, IM me today where said that, oh, they really did a lot of damage on Chapman because what did he do? All he said is that he went to cash. Like, the guy is a bull. The guy's the guy's temporarily gone to cash. And that, if you say that in this space, they come out like hyenas. And it's absolutely ridiculous. There were several years ago when we all called Mike Alkin's partner Tim Chilleri. We asked him, oh, do you we got the sense that he sold, and that we realized at that point that he goes long and short, like a lot of people do. And for your average uranium investor, that was kind of a wake up call, a great awakening, that we realized, oh, this is not long only. There are people here who are much more sophisticated than us that are trading and making money up and down, and they're not really, the kind of the difficulties that we experience, only knowing one direction and kind of holding. So, there's Tim didn't get run out of the room, right? Because Tim's also one of the end guys. So that's the way it goes. And there's a certain factor of, like, the cool guys, and they control the space. They certainly came out and attacked me. And I don't even mind it, because, and I've said it before, the more attention I get, and if they're listening, I call them the three Heathers. If you're listening, keep it up, because all you do to hear the other side and contemplate something different. Everybody has to make their own decisions, but it's healthy for people to hear both sides. And again, I mean, you called me a bear, and we joke about it. I'm, you know, I've been in this trade as long as anybody, but I just don't feel like I want to put money at risk when I feel that the prices are elevated, or that there's a larger force that could draw them down quickly. That's just being tactically smart. So all this, bear identification stuff too. But at the end of the day, um, what there's no animus to what we're doing. There's no you know there's no one who's, I'm not trying to blow anybody up. I try to get people's attention to think about, to think any which way, one, left, right, forward, backward, any direction, creative. I talk to folks, um you know like Austin's on this call, Iron Wang's on the call, Energy Burrito, they're here, who I've heard just really creative, how, what scenarios could look like going forward. And it's really refreshing to have those unique and creative thoughts, and it's healthy. I've got my thing. I don't have to be right. I said 100 times, could be wrong, but I think that it's like I said, it goes deeper than that. And frankly, I was honestly, Alex, there were times where Chapman was kind of like really taking a lot of damage, and I kind of was wondering like where you were, because I feel like you guys have connections. So I mean, maybe that's somehow.
So Chapman, do you feel like you were attacked, or what thoughts?
Okay, I mean, look, I'm not gonna just completely lie to you guys and say that, oh yeah, nothing bothers me at all. I mean, yeah, look, sometimes, frankly, I think they go a little bit too far. I don't mind the roasts. I mean, seriously. Like, oh, guys, sell centrus and energy fuels. Ha ha ha. I've done the research. That's funny to me. I mean, fine. You can make fun of, student stuff I've said in the past that have, turned out to maybe be a little bit premature. I don't care. That's, but some of the stuff has just been like, frankly, it's been a little bit constant. And it's very odd for me, to be quite frank with you, because it's sort of like I'm sort of sitting here like some guy with, I don't know, I guess I'm approaching 3,000 followers on Twitter. um I'm closer to 3,000 than I am 2,000 anyway. And to me, it just seemed like really weird, honestly. Just the whole thing of like, I'm apparently a defector. I'm a bull now, or a bear now, and I'm like, what? Okay, sure. Yeah, I guess I'm a bear now. The whole point of what I guess I've been trying to do here is the only thing that I want for people is to make more money in this trade. And if people do that, and if I become the inverse uranium, then you know what? I have some value. So, uh, for
Hey,
me,
Chapman, I got a quick. Oh, go
no,
ahead.
go ahead. No, no, please. Yeah, yeah. I can talk about this whole
Yeah,
time.
I respect your action here. I've been on the winning side of getting out of something and the losing side of missing out, right? So it's just how quick you can get in and get back out, and depending on how you want to scale in and what size you want to operate in. But my real question is to you is, you perked my ears up, is you had said there'd be a couple things that would get you interested again. I'm more, fixated on that link, saying what events or what circumstances would say, maybe I should change my mind and start scaling back in again.
Well, sure. I can tell you exactly what I'm thinking. Um, for the past 5 days, we've seen Cameco basically trade sideways. It gets rejected above 29.40 every single time. It finds support at 28.40 every single time. So if it goes above 29 and it closes above 30, that's a strong sign to me. I will I will fully admit, people, Cameco has shown some fairly amazing resilience here in the face of a broad market sell down. And I'm honestly not sure how much longer that's going to last. And if Cameco goes, it's going to bring everything down with them. Now, if Cameco can weather this storm, and let's say we have a softer Fed, and we move back into a bear market rally again. I do believe that we are in a bear market rally. It's a slow but sure sell down, in the broad indices at least. Then that's a signal for me to buy back in at that point. But I haven't seen that yet. And I guess, if people are upset with me because I have the luxury of the cash, which is frankly it is a luxury. I get that. Um, but at the same time, it is a decision that I did make. And, I'm seeing where things are going. And so far, it has been pretty good. We'll see. I feel like the whole sector is sort of at a decision point. And it's going to decide where it wants to go here fairly soon, probably within the next week or two here. So,
I just see a bunch of the issues consolidating right around the 200-day moving average. And once it pops over that, then it's all green light. But right now it's a struggle.
yeah. I mean, I'm not a technicals person, so, someone could tell you exactly how I feel about that. I mean, I follow some of the technicals people, and they have been some. There are some people that I follow on this that would give me a signal or not as to whether I would want to consider going back in. But at this time, I don't know. I'm feeling fine. There's certain. It's a certain pattern that I'm seeing. Um, but again, it's just every time that Cameco goes above 29.40, it sells down almost immediately. I mean, it gets rejected really hard too. Um, but it almost immediately finds support once you get down into the mid 28s. Almost always finding support at 28.40. Um, there was several large after hours trades. I don't know how people want to make into that, but over 114,000 shares and 250,000 shares at 28.67. Both that was the price for both of them. So I don't know how to read into that. I think tomorrow is going to be a very, very important day, though, as to what happens here. So, Jabroni, you got your hand up. What's up?
Yeah, so I don't know. I was in that space. I didn't hear any of this stuff. Maybe I was just not paying attention or I came in late. But like honestly, man, like I know we were joking earlier yesterday about the uranium lettuce hands, but dude, who gives a shit what these people think? I mean, at the end of the day, you got to make your money, and if you believe in it, I mean, nobody else is going to be there if you're paying the bill and you're wrong. So um, who cares, man? Just like do you. No, you don't even owe anyone to know what you're doing, right? This is all you're kind of
Yeah,
pitching this
I
stuff out
agree.
there and taking it in, and we're all trying to like kind of learn from each other in theory. There's like this weird ego kind of like thing that just happens to come out of, I think it's just people get competitive, but it's like, man, this is about making money at the end of the day. It should be. If you're in this stuff for like rap or notoriety or whatever, it's just like, I don't think it's going to end well for anyone who's trying to do that. You're not in it for the reason at that point. So I mean,
That's what
that's
TikTok's for.
yeah, I mean that's just my advice, man. And I mean, it sounds like you're there, so I'm kind of preaching to the choir, I feel like. But for anyone on here who's listening, it's like, dude, if you don't feel like you trust the trade, then just get out. And then if you, it's part of learning, but don't let people bully you into either taking a trade or leaving if you're not feeling it. Like that's insane. So
This is the part that has been very confusing to me. And I'll be honest with everyone. No one has all of the things that have been directed at me has or directed at me or directed at the people who feel like me is not encouraging us to buy. That's the weird part. It's more or less I mean, look, I'll be honest. On spaces you get me a little bit unfiltered. I think a lot of what the vitriol or all of the nonsense that has been directed at me is more of a reflection on the people talking about it rather than me. So,
I would say it's 100% people are not secure in what their position is, and they don't understand their thesis, and they're the they're it's the same logic as anyone else. It's the oh, it's FUD. Well, no, not really. There's other people in the trade. To actually do a trade, you need two parties. So, they're it's like a childish, ego-driven, unrealistic expectation that you're gonna have no counterparty taking place in this market. It's insane. It doesn't make any sense, and it's juvenile. So I wouldn't give it even this amount of discussion, honestly. Personally, I think this is like a distraction and a sideshow. You want to have people in this that are believe in it, and and are critically examining their thesis regularly, so that you don't get this ridiculous exuberance that drives the trade up well beyond what it should be. I
mm,
think that's way more harmful in the long run. I think personally, I'm very bullish, but again, if you see like a silver squeeze type thing happening, uranium, there's a uranium squeeze. It could set this trade back for years.
mm.
So
Yeah. I mean, you know, I've tried to exercise what I feel like is a bit of the get rich quick schemes here, which has a tendency of when you get a lot of retail involved in a trade, that tends to happen. And I don't know, I just, to me, maybe I'm looking a gift horse in the mouth, but things never quite go the way you want them to go. Iron Wang, you got your hand up. What's up?
Oh, look, I just wanted to chime in here for a moment and just talk about that group yesterday and everything that's gone on. So, look, basically, the group yesterday, it's a bunch of pumpers, okay? There's no sort of critical thinking associated, with their thesis. And then, to have people like Amir come on and really spruik up nuclear. Like, he's such a great talker and he's done great for the industry, but, he's been saying the same shit for the past 3 years. It's just really pumping up these stocks. There's nothing else to it than that. Twitter can become an echo chamber. You start following these same people, then you start getting those same tweets, and everyone's loving it. Everyone's, going great. And it becomes a complete echo chamber, which is something, with investing is the last thing you want. You want critical thought. You want your thesis challenged to strengthen the thesis, just like the scientific method. You want to be challenged to really strengthen your resolve in the thesis. And that's what I find in some people on Twitter don't do at all. It's just uranium, uranium, uranium. So I appreciate these spaces where you can have critical thought, you can actually challenge the thesis. And look, you guys know me. I'm I'm very pro uranium. I haven't sold a fucking thing, but still, it's about appreciating this space. And so, really, I just applaud people to ignore pumpers. When certain people who are ragging on someone going cash, what were they saying, in the past 6 months when they, bought up the fucking highs and they've lost half their capital? You don't hear, people coming down on them saying, you're a fucking idiot for making that trade. So, it's, and also really just the fact you put yourself out there, chappy. Not a lot of people do. Not a lot of people are saying what they're doing. It's all hidden. And then all they'll do is just pump the uranium trade and they'll trade in and out and do what they like. E.g. Derek Quick, shit, he was pumping uranium. Yes, he's been pumping it for years, but as soon as it started going down, his videos stopped for a good solid, 5 to 6 months. There wasn't a fucking Derek Quick video. So really, I just push people to really be critical of this pumpers and, really be open to critical thinking.
I would like to ask a question to the group. We started to get some news flow in front of WNA today. What did you guys think? Was there anything significant from any of the issues or any macro stuff?
I think it's hyped. People saying that any sort of contracts are going to get signed at this conference, I think are kidding themselves. Again, it's a networking sort of conference. That's really what's going to come out of it. And look, we may get some long-term contracts over the next few months based off this conference, but it's not going to happen this week. I believe there'll be very little news flow. Just like at the last conference, everyone was talking up, and it came back through, and it was just, oh yeah, it's a dud. I think it's going to be very similar with this conference, to be honest.
Did you guys see that thing about Xi going to Kazakhstan?
Yeah, I think that's interesting news too, Brian.
I
She going to Kazakhstan is there to basically prevent Russia from invading Kazakhstan.
right.
I think that has a. You do not send the leader of China to go negotiate for some uranium. I'm sorry, that's not how this works.
Well, no, I'm not saying that's the only reason, but I'm saying that anyone who understands the geopolitics of China knows they've been seeding the southern, Russian frontier with basically illegal immigrants to try to build up a land claim there for several decades. I mean, that's just been going on for a while, and they're trying to do the same thing. It's funny, they're doing the same logic that Russia used with Crimea, where oh, these are all historically these are all Russians. It's like China's doing the same thing to southern Russia, and Kazakhstan's kind of been a weird history with them as well, but it's not exactly the same. But I mean, clearly there's strategic things going on, and I'm sure uranium is a small part of it, but I would say that that is a factor, in my opinion. I mean, I don't think it's the only reason why they're doing it, but if they're expecting to use all these reactors, I mean, it's some stupid number that personally I don't believe China will ever come close to actually building all of them.
Yeah.
But let's just say it's like
Mm.
a quarter. They still need that, local supply with
Well, they need
depolarizing
a.
the world.
Well, they will need more. If they build anything beyond 2028, that's when China needs more uranium. Other than that, they're actually fine until that point. So, I mean,
Well, you
I
got to remember the. No, I was going to say you got to remember that Kazakhstan produces 2 million barrels per day of output of oil. I think that's the main driver, but it's about all the resources in Kazakhstan, not just talking about uranium.
Yeah, it could also be that too. I mean, and frankly, the oil might actually be more important. You might send someone to negotiate for oil. I don't think you really do for uranium. But again, we'll see. There are other things that are actually, frankly, make me a bit more bearish. It's not just the macro side of things. There are other things that can happen that may take the wind out of the sails of everybody for at least a year or two. And, I mean, there's a couple things that, look, I haven't really gotten into it on Twitter because I don't really get into it on Twitter, but there are some things that are being thrown around that are just not happening. There is going to be no Russian LEU ban. It's not in the cards. It's not on the table. It's not even being discussed. Full stop. All right? So that's just nonsense. The only thing that is being discussed right now is an HELU ban from Russian sources. That is in the Fueling Our Nuclear Futures Act. That is the extent of a Russian LEU ban. If you go back and you actually look at Dr. Huff speaking before Congress, I mean, this was sort of back when I was sitting around, wondering what the fuck is going on. Because frankly, it seemed like we're, and it still seems like we are, sort of sailing our way into a disaster here because nobody's really taking this seriously, or as seriously as I think it should be taken. But she basically told them point blank, you cannot ban Russian LEU. We don't have the ability, and we will not have that ability for several years to get off Russian LEU. So there's also something else that happened in Centris's books. Centris has incredibly complicated accounting. And I finally figured out what the hell was going on there, and that was that they were booking all of this revenue because it's revenue for GAAP purposes, but their cash was going down. Well, why? Well, it's because this was orders that were already paid for. So they have a whole bunch of orders on their books because when you sign for a uranium contract and Centrist is the middleman, then you have a delivery date. You can, however, delay that delivery date, but you have to pay them cash for it. And that's what happened in the second quarter, is that you had a whole bunch of deliveries that were basically delayed, but are now being accelerated. So what's going to happen here? I think you have a very distinct possibility, and this is something that if anybody knows any dock workers at the, place where they unload LEU off the ships, please get me in contact with them because I really want to know. So this is something that could happen. I think you're going to see, we're going to find out, there's a possibility that we're going to find out here in probably within the next couple weeks, perhaps the next couple months, that all the utilities are doing everything they can to get every last pound of LEU out of Russia as they can. And they will pay for it in fucking rubles if they have to, because they don't have a choice. They have to keep the reactors online. They're going to buy the closest thing that they can get to fuel first. So are they going? Yes, they're going to have a whole bunch of big budgets that they're going to be coming out with here in the next few months. What are they going to be buying that with? Are they going to be going to Cameco and buying $90 uranium, the furthest thing away from fuel? Or are they going to be spending every last cent they have, getting every last bit of enriched uranium out of Russia as they can? I think they're going to go for the latter. Now, we'll see. The thing is, though, is that when that date is supposed to, we haven't seen that letter, of course, but we have an idea as to when that date ends, or when that date that happens, that they will no longer be able to import uranium from Russia. You don't know when you're going to have enrichment capacity in the OECD to replace that. So you have a known and you have an unknown. Now, the way that you hedge against that unknown is that you get all of what you can in your known, scenario. And that said, they're going to get every last pound of enriched uranium as they can. So, this may be delayed for another year. And, it's something I'm working on. I don't have that. This is speculation. It's not enough. There's not enough here to make a proven reserves article out of it yet. But if I get that proof, then there's going to be. So
What if Russia stops sending that chapter?
they could actually do that too. I mean, so far we haven't heard that move. I think that if that happens, you're probably more likely to get a downblending of the HEU stockpiles first. But again, if Russia does announce an export ban, I fully expect every uranium equity to go up 50%. And yes, I will buy back in at that point. So, um, there you go. Jabroni, you got your hand up.
Yeah, so I saw this a while back, and I don't know if it really went too far. I know some people are aware of it here, but ironically enough, in my state, in Illinois, they reopened an old uranium enrichment facility in kind of like rural. It's in a place called Manhattan, which is a couple hours outside of Chicago. But they actually reopened it. It was like a facility from like the late 50s, and it was shut down in like 2017, I think, and they are potentially aiming to have it reopened by next year.
I think you're talking about
Processing.
Converdine.
No, it's called Honeywell.
Yeah, that's Honeywell. Yeah, it's Converdine. You're
Oh,
talking about.
okay.
Yeah,
All right.
you're talking about Honeywell Converdine.
Yeah.
That is not enrichment. That's conversion, which, by the
Okay.
way, is something that also would get me back into the trade, because in order to have conversion, you need to have U3O8 that's going to be converted. So if you have U3O8 that's going to be, that's coming to the converter, that is a very, very bullish signal. So far, we haven't heard that yet. I mean, look, there's just a couple things that just,
I
for
just
me, that,
Go ahead,
sorry, this is just another one of those things. I'm sure everybody watched my interview with Antonio. And yes, he was pushing back on me, and yeah, I get it. That's, he was doing his job. But that was one of the things that I said, that, we don't have a firm restart date for Converdine. These are just more things that are just adding to it. That's just sort of making me feel like this is all a false start. But yeah, go ahead. What were you saying?
Well, I was just saying, like, just in general, like, if you guys aren't familiar with Illinois, I mean, it's like one of the most dysfunctional. So, I mean, we give California a run for their money, and we really have nothing other than Chicago to make up for it. I mean, it's unreal. There's no good weather here. There's just corruption, and everyone who lives here has like a sort of Stockholm syndrome, or they're bound here by their families. So, I mean, the fact that they would reopen the facility, I'm sure there's some like legacy. It was only like what 5, 6 years old, but even so, I mean, I'm amazed that they would, you know, re reopen a facility in Illinois at all. So that's pretty bullish in my opinion. But the other thing that is, kind of interesting is that, it's a very blue state. Um, the people were pretty like beholden to the progressives because they're the most noisy ones, and there was a lot of like anti-nuclear here. They were really trying to shut down our nuclear plants as well, and that failed. So, just from a sentiment check, when you have a captive blue state that's been usually just kind of catering to the noisiest wing, and they're like, willing to, it's not a Diablo Canyon, but it is something I would say is worth keeping in mind is kind of like a changing the tides sort of scenario. And I'll throw that link up as well for anyone who wants to check it out. But you can look into it. It's pretty cool. And again, I think that date is actually tentatively for January of next year. So it's only like 4 months away.
Ismail? Has it been? Sorry. Go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear
Hello.
you. Yeah, we can hear you. What's up?
Okay, hello. I am Ismail from Palestinian. I want to know that the state of America does not support the Palestinian causes.
So it's a little off topic.
Yeah, I think you've got the wrong space for that. I'm sorry. We're not really talking about that at the moment. Sorry.
I am talking with for Palestinian.
So again, the wrong place. So I think it's the wrong place for you to talk about it.
Okay, that takes care of that.
Really quick before we get to Austin, again, it's the type of energy that we want to kind of cultivate, and we'll kind of move on after this. But this is the type of energy that I want to have, is that people are hanging out, talking, and this and that. So I just don't. I don't think we. I just don't really have energy and time to be like going back and forth saying like look at these guys, look at these guys. So just we do ours, and that's it. So I'll hang out with them, and let's just try not to get too negative on them. So uranium cranium, we'll keep it keep it cool. Let's try not to like instigate and do that kind of thing. So and also really quick good news as well. Some of you guys might know this. It's that Liberty got a really big interview coming up, so he's one of our regulars here. I don't think he's really announced it or anything, but it's a really big interview. So we're really looking forward to that. So Austin, go ahead.
Yeah, and on that note, if anybody doesn't already watch Liberty's YouTube videos or attend the space he does with Alex, he's top notch. He's one of the most underfollowed people, I would say, on Twitter. Like his technical analysis is on point for sure. So highly recommend that if you have any interest in uranium, gold, silver, etc. One question. It kind of seems like almost like the new big elephant in the room that nobody's really talking about for the uranium just bear cases. And I'm just gonna say, let's flash 3 months into the future without really going down the rabbit hole of debating whether this is gonna happen or whether it's a good or bad thing. Because I don't want to distract us from uranium. So we had a pretty big announcement the other day that Russia will at least allegedly withhold natural gas until sanctions are rolled back. So let's flash 3 months into the future. We'll say Europe cracks. Europe needs the gas. Sanctions are rolled back. That basically includes just global utilities are now buying uranium enrichment from Russia as normal. What impact does that have on the market? Just like solely from just like enrichment capacity, uranium pounds capacity on the market, and how impacted would the companies that are investing heavily in enrichment, in conversion, and in uranium projects be? I know there's a strong argument that bifurcation will last forever, but everything seems like it'll last forever until it doesn't.
I mean, there's a ton of unknowns there as to as to what exactly a peace deal would be. And, the thing is that it's so difficult to build out enrichment capacity that, if anything, even if, let's say, we were going to actually go forward with building out enrichment capacity, right? Let's say that happens, right? You're still going to have to get the enriched material, assuming you want to maintain inventories at the present level. So overfeeding is basically off the table. And that is going to be bearish, no matter what. I mean, basically any kind of deal where beyond the next, if you're not taking Russia and enrichment out of the equation within 2 to 3 years, that is frankly bearish. because it goes back to, and you're taking a lot of pounds that, off the table because they don't have to be mined in that situation. If bifurcation does hold, yeah, that's very, very bullish. But there is also a question as to whether that's going to be reality or not. A change in leadership in Russia could be, could change a lot of things. And the fact of the matter is that there is no LEU ban right now that is, on the table, at least in the United States. Now, because you don't have it as, it would not be a statutory, provision, that's a lot easier to basically, roll back, even if there is a de facto ban rather than a de jure ban. So I would say that basically anything that involves any kind of peace deal with Russia, you have to assume is going to be bearish until proven otherwise. And that's just basically, folks, I come at this from the numbers perspective just because I know how much uranium is going to have to go through overfeeding. It is an ungodly amount of uranium. People need to understand, and I need to really, really stress this. We have never mined more than 70 kilotons of uranium in 1 year, ever. In the history, even after we were making all the bombs over the Cold War, worldwide, we have never mined more than 70 kilotons. In a bifurcated scenario, in order to basically keep enriched material at current stock inventory levels, you would have to mine at least 100 kilotons every year. There is not enough mines that are ready to even be shovel ready at this point, that are even, that we could even achieve that. So there's going to be a lot of market pressure to ensure that somehow, some way, enriched uranium is going to find its way out of Russia, in much the same way that oil finds its way outside of Russia. They may end up just paying more for it, but, all of a sudden we might find ourselves buying enriched material from India, and just looking at, folks, if Europe is willing to just, buy gas, and they don't even really need gas to keep the lights on necessarily. Well, they really do, but, they can go back to coal, I guess. But when it comes to essentially keeping the lights on, you don't really have a lot of choice. So this isn't quite, yes, I am not, don't make no mistake about it. I am very bullish on this trade, but you have to be careful. And this market is so opaque. It's so nebulous. You guys don't have, there may be a few people in here that do, but look, you're not Rick Rule. You don't have the ability to just go to the mine and get a really sweet deal on, options, and then warrants that are, dated 4 years after this mine might be in production. Like really stupidly cheap warrants too. So your due diligence has to be twice as good as Rick Rule's. Something to think about.
Or you just have to have a very low cost basis.
Or a very low cost basis. I kind of try to go for both strategies. So,
Very high pain tolerance, just saying.
Yeah. So, that's just the thing that, I know that I come across as like super cautious, and I don't know. I'm not trying to like be against people, or just, not trying to hurt their feelings, or I'm not trying to be a defector. I'm just saying, folks, you got to be careful, because this will turn on you. It can turn up, and it can turn down just as hard, just as fast. So never be afraid to take gains. Never be afraid to sell in the green. But if you're holding and you've got a really low cost basis, don't be afraid to hold either. Everyone's got to do what's best for them. I don't make that decision. I'm not your money manager. I'm not your fiduciary. The only thing I can do is I can tell you what I've done. Some people like to follow that advice. Maybe they shouldn't. You know, I mean, I'm a due diligence guy. I don't read the market tea leaves. So, I can do pretty well if I'm just, feeling out the market and I'm constantly looking at a chart and I can kind of feel it out by intuition just a little bit. But intuition is not always right. So, I'm only human and I don't have a crystal ball. And I wish other people would remember they don't have a crystal ball either. So, Austin, you got your hand up. Thanks.
Okay, now for a more optimistic bull question. So Sprott is buying a ton of pounds, right? What happens, if anything, when they run out? What happens when they just come out and say, we cannot source pounds at any price? One, is that feasible, say, call it within 6, 12 months? And two, what happens?
Well, Austin, I'd like to chime in there. They're typically buying up to 3 months out, but I know that Sprott was buying almost up to a year out at some point in time. So if people are still willing to sell to them in the future on the forward strip, Sprott can buy more than you could think, and they can register those as sales. It's just not, they're just taking out future supply.
Okay, got it. You're saying it's effectively, maybe not impossible, but very unlikely that they're going to quote unquote run out.
It's not that they'll run out. I mean, there's always a price for pounds, right? It's just they'll run out of pounds at that price, and then you'll just start seeing it gap up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's there's always going to be future production, and there's always going to be. I think what Eric is saying here is a really good point, and that is that there's always a price in the future, and it's hard to find a situation where they're going to run out. So the price may go up, absolutely. So we'll see. But I think that would definitely be something that's quite bullish, though, if they start having to basically buy pounds sort of into the future at a much higher rate. I mean, we'll see. I mean, we sort of saw, if you're looking at the Numerico or whatever in the world they are called themselves, but it sort of feels like they were kind of, a buyer and a seller, we'll just assume it was Sprott, was sort of playing footsie with each other. They're sort of going, the ask would go up, then the bid would go up, then, they do this again, and they come back down, and, they're sort of up and down, see where they're going. So, I think, Eric, you got something else for us. Sorry.
Yeah, Austin, you can go out on YouTube. I've seen one or two videos specifically with the trader that buys for Sprott, and he's being interviewed for 20 or 30 minutes at a time. And that'll give you kind of an idea psychologically how they like to trade, how they like to buy in the market, and, what they do and they don't do. And he was very open and honest. He just wasn't saying what they're doing in the future, but they discussed their approach about how they go out and buy pounds.
Oh man, I'm looking at the ASX today, and like BHP, Rio. BHP is almost down like 2%. They've been down 2% at one point. They may buy back up. Whitehaven's down. I don't know. This is the thing that does kind of give me some pause. Yes, I know it's not uranium, but when I'm looking at other resources that, demand destruction is a thing, and you may not have enough money to build reactors. I mean, there are things that can happen there that can slow down demand, and yeah, nothing makes, something cheaper than not having enough money, than nobody not having enough money to buy it anymore. So
they have a pretty nice dividend, right?
Yeah, they did have a nice dividend. But at the same time, I mean, that's sort of my point there. They make money. They make a lot of money. I mean, BHP trades at, actually a fairly nice, price to earnings. So at the same time, even that's getting sold off here. So again, I gotta say, like, I have been quite impressed with how resilient the uranium sector has been. But I think the next couple days, I think especially tomorrow, is going to be kind of interesting see where this all goes. Um, I think, to go back to something that Liberty said, that even if uranium does sell down, it can sell down with the market and not have to go through the bull channel. So, Iron Wang, you got your hand up. What's up?
Well, I'll just put it to you like this. My view is that, again, the main competitor to uranium is natural gas. Now, you go look at natural gas prices, what they've done over the past, I would say, over a year. It's been exponential. And even if those prices do come back down to, just as they have dropped 50%, but it's still astronomical. Uranium takes a long time. There's long lead times, 2 years of the fuel cycle. And the amount of storage utilities can have, as we've said, Japan can have up to 10 years worth of storage of this stuff. It takes a long time to see the move in uranium. But I do believe that move is still there, as with all other energy costs. It just takes time. And whether that's 6 months, whether that's 2 years, whether that's 5 years, it's eventually going to get there and match its competition. It's just time frames. We don't know. Because of the opaqueness of the market. And again, I've brought this up before. I just love how uranium is the most regulated mining industry in the world. All these pounds are tracked and traced from when they're mined to how they're enriched to through to the utilities. Yet we don't know how many fucking pounds are out there. I don't understand how those two mix. But the opaqueness to this market, I just don't understand. I think it's hidden behind the whole national interest side of things. But because of that opaqueness, we just don't know the time frames. But I'll just, as a bull case, just be patient, and it'll eventually get there.
Yeah, I mean, I exactly. That does go along exactly with what I've said, which is just patience. This is this is a trade that you really do have to be patient in. So, Alex, you were about to say something. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's exactly what attracted me, is that, you're going to have, it's going to go a lot higher, but you don't know when. And other people do not have the patience to wait in it. Money managers cannot be in it. And again, this is my thinking from like 3 years ago, but that was it, right in the nose. Like they can't be here. They cannot be catching this, whatever these falling knives or, companies are. So Jabroni, go ahead.
Yeah, kind of like that's one of the things that really made me like originally back in like 1920 like get into this so heavily was the fact that there's that asymmetry and the fact that like I mean I got in like the perfect time. So I know like there's guys who were in the yesterday some space that was a guy was in like from 2005 or something and I'm like man that's got to be brutal but like the financial class can't do this like they can't even trade this the way that I think the best way to do it would be there's like the short term in and out kind of strategy where you're trying to capture alpha and then redeploy it that's way more involved. I think most retail people can't or won't do that well. And the longer term strategy of just getting in, having a realistic expectation of the trade and the thesis, and then sticking with it. Like this type of thing, I think. Maybe it sounds naive, but I really do think like this is one of the most optimal trades and investments for people who are like retail investors because you can just set like a 401k or something to have some uranium portfolio and it'll sit for like 10, 20 years. And if you leave it, generally, I think the trend is going to go that way. So like, you're not going to get hit with these crazy, let's say we do have a crazy recession, depression, crash coming up in the next 10 years all that stuff that goes on that all the PM bulls and the dollar bears are talking about, like this will still probably be insulated for the most part, or at least it'll be comparable. So like no matter what you do, if you don't mess yourself up, I think you can do very well in this trade. You can either trade it actively, like how Chapman's saying, and maybe try to be a little bit more fancy with how you execute stuff, or you just set it and forget it and just sort of leave it be. As long as you're aware of what's going on with the market and you keep your conviction, then you're good. Like it's very simple, I think, and I think people try to make it a little more complicated than it has to be because we're trained to do that by these CNBC types who, you got to have some string of letters next to your name to be profitable when it's all just kind of bullshit, actually. And again, the fact that a lot of these institutional names can't even get in it right now, that's such a huge upside, man. Like, people don't appreciate, um, how much upside there is by just kind of outmaneuvering these massive funds who either won't or can't do certain trades. Um, and I would advise anyone beyond uranium to keep an eye out for those kind of trades and sectors that are not being serviced by the financial services industry, where there's a need down the road, because it will come around eventually. And that's how you get that low cost basis, where you can sit this out and you're not going to get shaken out by a little bit of downturn.
So what else is there? Silver and copper, or what else do you think, Jabroni?
I'm very involved in coal. I was very early on in Peabody, and that's my best performing, other than maybe uranium fuels and next gen and Denison. I'd say Peabody's my best performer um, by far. So like stuff like that. Like, I'm very contrarian, and I enjoy like arguing. So when people tell me I'm an idiot for a trade, like, that's just like music in my ears. Like, I love that. So I try to find things where people are like, "You're so stupid. Why would you put money into that? Like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life."
Just a comment on your Chapman, what you were saying before. Sorry, Peter Knight here. You were just talking about the PEs of BHP, etc., and how they're turning. I mean, I found that you really need to be contrarian on established resources players when it comes to price earnings ratios, because they're ultimately just built out of the inputs that the analysts are putting them in, and they're always very, very late to the party. Um, you know, if you're buying BHP on a high PE, then essentially your analyst community has capitulated and they're putting very low inputs in, and that's usually the turn. Um, Whereas if you look at the current PEs, the market's obviously not buying them on those PEs because they don't think that the iron ore price is going to be around for the next 2 years. I mean, it's never been able to be sustained over $100 a ton. Have a look at all your pure play thermal and coking coal, pure play miners out there. They're all trading on sometimes 2 or 3 PEs. I mean, if the market thought those prices, $450 thermal was going to be around for another 3 years, then and you can extrapolate a 10 to 12 PE on those things should be trading 4 or 5 times higher than what they actually are now. So the market simply doesn't believe the price. So, and the market is 9 out of 10 times more correct than the analyst in that long-term pricing scenario. So, yeah, I found actually high PEs on established producers is actually a great sign to think about buying. Low PEs, time to sell.
Yeah, the way I would explain to me, it's always stuck with me. I think it's a very simple explanation of exactly what you just said, what I think is spot on, is that commodities are the only market that look expensive at the bottom and cheap at the top. And I think it's so true.
And that is actually, that is some good advice, and that frankly would explain what entirely is going on with BHP. Because I mean, we're now down over 2% today, and this is Jesus. I mean, that's a big company. I mean, I call BHP big mining. I mean, it's just what they are. They're just a big mining company.
Yeah, they've just gone X as well. So there was a lot of money hanging around for that divvy, and as it was hanging around for that divvy, as the iron ore price is pegging back, and now the iron ore price pegged back, and money's just flowing out, mate.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to be in BHP. I mean, I think long term it's something to be in, but for the time being, like I'm just maintaining a cash position, mostly just because I want the flexibility. If I feel like things are going up, then then I'll ride that wave. But at the same time, there's I just feel like this macro trend it's coming for resources. Uranium is held strong. I don't know how much longer it's gonna be able to do that. So,
Confluence. Yeah. That's what's going on right there.
Yeah, whatever the world that means. I mean, Jesus Christ. What is confluence again? Can somebody please tell me these words? Oh, sheesh.
So, Peter, are you a money manager and an investor, or what's your background, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm a stockbroker, equities, specialize in resources.
And uranium, precious metals, what kind of stuff do you do?
I'm agnostic, really, as far as what materials, but I've been following uranium pretty closely since 17. I was also an investor there in the previous bull market from sort of 06 through to 11. So I missed the coal trade now, which I'm a bit disappointed in. That kind of happened really quick. It was one of those ones that things just went up pretty quickly, and you think, oh, I'm late to the party, and they keep going up. So that was a bit disappointing. But certainly around decarbonisation, metals and minerals, nickel, copper. I think nickel's got some real legs. Copper also, and some of the more niche, cobalt, manganese, etc.
Not that I'm going to try to turn this to a gold and silver space, but what do you think of Pantaro?
Pantaro. Where's that listed?
PNR, ASX.
Not familiar with that, actually.
Yeah, that was something that someone put me on. Apparently, they're taking the cash flows from one gold mine and they're using it to complete the capex on another. So it's sort of interesting.
Okay.
I don't know, something to check out. Get back to me what you think about that one. I mean, it's trading like sideways, and I mean, I put a bid in on it yesterday and it didn't even fill. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just having a look at it now. Yeah.
You were on a few months ago, Peter, right? You were on I think I remember talking to you.
Yeah, I think I recall the same, Alex. Yeah.
Hey guys, I got a question.
Go ahead.
Does anyone have thoughts on this most recent 1.5 billion emergency funding request from Congress? I've been reading through, some of the notes on it, and it looks like it's to assist in establishing a reliable fuel supply. And I thought I read there is a date to either acquire enriched uranium or fund the means of enriched uranium by the end of this month. And there's been some speculation that that money might go into further financing more downblending, but I think there's already 700 million out there that has been earmarked for that. And there's been some other, I guess, speculation that, well, you've only got 3 options for building out enrichment capacity, really, in the United States. You've got Urenco, you've got Centrus, and Silex. And only 2 of those plays are public. So I'm wondering if anyone has thoughts on where that money might go and how they're positioning to make a play on that.
Well, as far as this, jeez. Okay, I know that everyone sort of may have heard my joke on Antonio's show. I was saying like, which $1 billion are we talking about? Because there's been a lot of X number of $1 billion being thrown around this year and for uranium. So, okay, for that, it's probably going to get rolled up into an omnibus spending bill sometime in Congress. The thing is that Congress has just passed a huge spending legislation. So you have to go to Congress now and you're asking them for even more money. And it's like, okay, who knows what exactly is going to happen there. There is money in the, let's see, this would be the Fueling Our Nuclear Futures Act. That unlocks about $600 million in addition to other forms of funding for the HALEU, supply system. A lot of people need to realize that the enrichment system that you set up for high assay low enriched uranium can also be used for low enriched uranium. So very likely this is just going to be some more money that will go to either helping, either loan guarantees for additional enrichment capacity, or it's going to go into downblending of HEU. The Fueling Our Nuclear's Futures Act literally is probably one of my favorite pieces of legislation I've seen so far. Congress has decided that it's now HALEU, not HALEU. They've literally gone through and they're saying like everything it says HALEU-LEU, we're going to insert, it's now HALEU. So Congress has decided what that is. The other thing in that bill is that Congress is tired of DOE, basically, kicking the can. This is now a law in which specifies by September 30th, 2024, not less than 3 metric tons of HALEU will be ready. By December 31st, 2025, not less than 8 metric tons, and by June 30th, 2026, not less than 10 metric tons will have been produced. So this is the timelines that's in the latest congressional bill here. Granted, September 30th, 2024 is 2 years from now. So that's not a long time. So having said all that, there is, I believe this will go to the nearest thing for fuel, and that is the only way that you could actually procure a LEU stockpile in case of an emergency, and that would be downblending HEU. So that, of course, costs money. Someone has to be paid to do that. Nobody runs a charity. So BWXT does not run a charity because they're the people that would be doing that in the United States. And I imagine that's where that money would go to. So.
Yeah, I was looking at BWXT and had a similar thought. I wasn't sure if it was realistic to try and I wasn't sure if the DOE had planned on maybe giving a little bit of funding to Silex, to see if they could help with the building of the new facility, or sprinkling a little bit of money over on Centrus to see if they can increase their AC 100 capacity. But yeah, if it's
find out if the AC
helium,
or finding out if the AC 100 actually works, doesn't spin itself to death. So.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for speaking on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see here. Oh boy, cranium's coming back up. Now remember, we're trying to be nice and have fun here, Uranium Cranium. So be nice, Brett.
Hey, well, all I was going to do is going to ask you to give us some facts on BWXT, because I'm just looking, at all the folks here and thinking that, and I don't know a lot about BWXT, but that's another entity, potentially investable entity in the space that people should know of, that we, if it's not a miner, you would never hear about it, but they make a fabulous amount of money. Don't know if there's any upside to it, but I mean, I was just gonna. The only reason I jumped up here was to say, hey, can you teach us about BWXT?
Well, BWXT is always going to be around. They traded a fairly high price to earnings ratio, but I think they get perhaps a little bit of a premium simply because they're BWXT and they're always going to be around. They're always going to be around for one thing because they make naval nuclear reactors. So they are probably going to have a part to play in SMRs in the future, and they are in fact a supplier for NuScale. They also make commercial nuclear components. I believe, have had a contract for some of the steel parts that would go into some of the refurbishments in the reactors in Canada. So they're a nuclear steam supplier as well.
Do you know, are they Canadian, and do you know what their MCAP?
No, they're based in Virginia, I believe. Or at least I know their headquarters in Lynchburg, Virginia. That's right. And that's where they have a fairly significant factory that actually makes naval reactors as well. But as far as what their market cap is, they are a $4.7 billion company. Um, they basically pay kind of a small dividend yield. They have been priced higher in the past. I mean, they've been, they've been in the, they're actually up from, where they have been over time. But in the past, they've been, roughly a 60 to $70 company as far as
And
that goes.
how do they fit into the fuel cycle?
Well, they do. They have fuel fabrication. So, and they're the people that do the down blending as well. So, they do. I believe they produce fuel for CANDU reactors. They also They own a company that does down blending in through a liquid process. Instead of like turning it into a gas, it's done via a liquid as well. I mean, basically anything that has anything to do with nuclear that's in the supply chain, they have something to do with. Now, if you are invested in URA, you are also invested in BWXT as well. Yeah, I mean, I think that would be that's just sort of it's a safe place to basically put your money, in my opinion. Probably, I don't know what the upside potential is. I mean, yeah, they could go back to. I mean, they're at $51 right now. They're getting kind of cheap. I think they if they go down to like, man, 40 or 44, they become a definite buy. Absolutely, just because. I mean, they're BWXT. I don't know. They're not going anywhere. We're always going to have naval reactors. We're always going to have fuel fabrication. And again, they are a fairly important steam supplier. So what I mean by that is that they would supply certain components like pressure tubes, like the tubes that are basically like bent, that have to, be certified to be essentially certified to be nuclear grade, which is up there because nuclear is just not allowed to fail. So that tells you what nuclear grade is. But yeah. Again, they're not a bargain at this price, though. I mean, again, they trade at. I mean, they trade right now. They're at a 15 times earnings. That's not, man. For a company like that, I would really prefer to buy them closer to 8, but it just depends. I mean, if they're having, I would honestly have to, dive into them a little bit deeper to see if they're having some expanding business lines that may bring some more revenue in.
I
But
believe they are making like a next gen fuel. I think it's called Tricio or something. That might be X Energy, but
well,
they're basically
they would be the fabricators of that fuel. So
okay,
which is fairly important. So that's that triso fuel will then go into, I think it's I think there's isn't that the reactor that's going in at what is it?
TerraPower.
No, I don't think it's TerraPower. I think it's what's that reactor? Oak Ridge, Tennessee, I think. I forgot. I think that there is a reactor I know that uses triso. Triso is sort of it's a kind of halio, so it's a higher enrichment level, I believe, off the top of my head. But yeah, and they're that's just sort of an extension of their fuel fabrication business. So.
So how's everyone feeling about the merger, UEC and UEX?
Can I just say I don't like it? I mean, whatever. I don't know. This is not the kind of mergers and acquisitions that I want to see. The kind of merger and acquisition that I want to see is, well, maybe does anybody else want to talk about this first before me? I don't know. Let's Eric's coming back up. Maybe
Yes.
let's
Well,
do
I guess
this.
I'll talk. I mean, again, just as the speculator, I did really well on it, and I should have held it longer, but I didn't. But now I'm a shareholder for UEC, so that's my story.
What? Alex, you sold? I can't believe you are canceled, sir.
Yeah, I actually sold a little bit of Fission 2, so that's not the company Fission 2, because I know there's like a regular and a 3.0, but yeah, I sold a little bit of mine too. So, but I went really deep into a stock that did well today. I don't want to pump it, but did really well today. So I won't say anything else.
Good, great. No, we're always, unfortunately,
Kraken.
as what was it, Kraken? Please tell me it was
No, it
Kraken.
wasn't.
Oh my god. Jeez. Oh, as you
No,
know,
it's Azincore went up 19% today.
yeah. Whew, man, that's
Those Chapman, what you were saying, I don't think that UEX UEC combination was good for long-term shareholders. I think it's good for a story of pounds in the ground, and if you're playing that to sing it to Wall Street, fine. But in terms of operating UEX, I've got some concerns on that.
I mean, I'll put it to you like this, folks. If I get any inclination that someone is coming in to buy that company, yes, I'm buying it because someone is going to come in. But until that happens, I'm sitting on the sidelines. Because this seems to be exactly what that kind of that M&A was made for. So now,
Does it matter? Does it matter that is it supposed to be synergy of ISR plays? Is that, I mean, that was always my question because UEC has done such a, I think a fabulous job of marketing themselves as the largest ISR, production ready U.S. producer, and in the process, really denying Bill Sharif and Encore Energy that. I mean, they've got to be in competition. I think that Bill Sharif always wanted that, and I think Amir kind of headed him off at the pass because he's already bigger, which is kind of a cool little drama competition even of its own. Um, but it made me think that, I mean, UAC knows nothing else other than ISR, and what is that? Is that to suggest that UEX is somehow, kind of a la Dennis and some sort of potential ISR play?
I don't know. It's for me. I think I'd echo Eric's comments on saying that it's pounds in the ground, and then also saying like, oh yeah, we have tenements in Athabasca too. Don't you want to buy us now? Aren't you so happy? Like, oh my god, we have so much. That seems to be where this is going. And I think you'll have like the ISR part of it. We'll get it into production, let's say, and then the story there will be hey, we've got production and we've got so many pounds in the ground now.
Optionality.
Yeah, there you go. Now as investors, I would say, look, you guys can win big on that. I mean, you get some sucker coming in to buy that thing for cash all day every day, absolutely. And I would just say, you guys, you're sort of at the ground floor, and you know what's up. Somebody else may not. So that's that can be how that goes there. So
I was also going to ask, can someone refresh our memory if UEX shareholders got any kind of a premium, or what it sold at, what the terms of the deal were? Was it shares and crap, or was it cash?
Well,
there was 2 or 3 different rounds of additional bidding above and beyond for UEX. I don't remember the exact purchase price or the market cap for it, but UEX shareholders definitely did get a premium, but to what extent I couldn't tell you.
Well, it's sort of like, because it's not really cash. Honestly, is it more like premium or just more dilution? I don't know. I mean, that's the thing that bothers me about stock deals. I don't like them. I like cash. I don't know.
I don't mind a stock deal if the stock is highly liquid. You can basically turn that into cash. But if it's not liquid, I agree with
Yeah,
you.
that's a fair point. I will I will I will agree to that one. So um so yes. Let's see
So
here.
my cost basis per share is $1.17. So you gotta like UEC at that price, right?
Yeah, I think you so I think you really do as well. Absolutely. So
I mean, as a on a fundamental basis, or is it just on the trading technical piece? Because I mean, if you were what if you did an NPV 8 on UEC?
don't.
I mean,
Just
right,
don't.
that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's an absurd concept, but
Well,
I mean, I think
what you got to
I'll
look
give
out
it
for
quantitative
that
time.
company and
trading.
a couple other companies is they sure do you like to use that ATM. Whenever you hear about a uranium company always bragging about we're cash flow, we have no debt and X amount of cash in there, they're smacking that ATM all the time at the dilution of current shareholders.
What is there any kind of is the announcement of the ATM or a reopening of the ATM indicative of the price direction that the issuer thinks expects it to that shares to go, or not? Or is that not really? Is there no conventional wisdom on that, or not? And the reason I ask, because I dare say I think it might have been Uranium Royalty Company. It might have been one of the other uh, entities that Amer's controlling, that I think they literally just today or yesterday reopened an ATM on it.
I just would go back and look at like a couple years prior, see how many shares were outstanding versus now in these kind of companies. There's some serious dilution. Now, some of it is accretive. You could use an ATM to buy a company, raise capital to buy a company, but usually the guys that are doing ATM have real high salaries. So it's what's the purpose of using it, and how liberal are they in using it?
I mean, I guess it
I
would
think a
be
royalty company is a little bit of a different go at it. Like how I would think about it is, hey, I'm not an expert here, so maybe I'm off base, but generally my understanding is it's not necessarily a statement on price one way or the other. Like if you think your company is way undervalued, you wouldn't issue shares, right? Because you'd be worried about diluting yourself. I don't know if it's really about direction. I think it's more just, can I get capital in a less expensive way in another way? And if the answer is no, you look at issuing shares. And if the price is high enough that you think basically it's fairly valued or overvalued, you consider it. This is why just like Google, Apple, these type of great companies, they don't really issue shares to raise money. If they want to raise money, they raise debt, right? Because they are credit worthy, because they have good businesses. And generally it's the companies that are in the ATM that are not credit worthy. So that's how I would think about it. Like royalties are a different beast, but generally if a company's hitting the ATM a lot, I would put it, they're either exploiting their shareholders like AMC. Sorry if I offended anybody in this one, or they're just not credit worthy. So I would look at it as a bad thing.
Right, I just looked. It's 5 days ago. Uranium Royalty did a press release. They are renewing the ATM for 40 million, I believe, Canadian, and that'll be open until they either get 40 million Canadian or through July, some date in July of 2023. So just things like that just stick in my head, because I'm also trying to wrap my head around. I understand these companies have to finance themselves and raise money, and how much, and all that good gravy is of interest to me. So that was 5 days ago for Uranium Royalty Corporation.
why is it that's so weird. Why is a royalty company? I mean, I guess, obviously they have to buy a royalty. I get that. they have to raise money in order to essentially do that, uh, what do they call it in gold? Franco Nevada kind of thing going on. But
But you know what?
yeah,
You know what, guys? I tell you, it's
stream.
qualitatively, yeah, the royalties, and I would ask Chapman or any of you other more pro guys who understand this stuff. I did look into kind of under the hood at Uranium Royalty Corporation, the actual royalties that they have, and they do have even one on, I dare say, like MacArthur River. But what's interesting about it is that it's not the normal, kind of royalties that I see in all these other precious metal plays where it's like 1% NSR net smelter royalty, or 2% or something along those lines, etc. And I don't even know, what constitutes, for the, for the company giving up the royalty, what sucks to have to, how much equity you have to give away, how much royalty you have to give away. But the ones that are in URC are very different. They get into like 80% of this, I don't even, or 20% of this kind of money. It doesn't look anything. I have a feeling that qualitatively they're inferior type royalties because um, some of them, on a couple of them, maybe two or three of them, are on kind of decent names, and the other seven aren't so great, and the other seven are kind of like weird. So it would just be something that someone could teach the rest of us about that whole end of things, because that always struck me as a major deal. To have to give up that royalty, it almost was, I remember when it was kind of like, for the less sophisticated investors of us out there, it's like watching Shark Tank, and you can see these people just like sweating bullets over having to give up, a few percent more equity in the company to get some money. It's just, giving up a few percent is just is could be make or break for a lot of those entities. So something to look into if someone wanted to look at URC and compare that to what is like way more typical, because that's definitely not.
Now, Uranium, the other thing I wanted to ask you is how many of those projects you actually would generate a cash stream?
I looked at I would tell you that there were like two. There were like two that I think are, because I you know, it doesn't. I don't see any reason why Cameco would ever need, you know, Amir's money and Uranium Royalty Corporation's money. It's not a big entity, and so I can see that they would do something mutually beneficial that would, they'd be happy to get something, get some money if it worked out for them, and kind of get some exposure for URC, but it can't be anything significant. And there might be one other project there, and someone could even look while we're talking. It's really like a list of 10. There might be one other one there that's of interest, and the other ones I don't I can't even imagine that that's anytime soon. And then, yeah, I'm not saying that it's a new thing. I guess you could give them time to develop it. I mean, if anybody's going to develop it, it's Mir, because the dude's just like always, working the phone. But yeah, I don't. I think qualitatively on the project side, it's not impressive. And I think that what kind of, it's not a red flag to me, but what raised like an Olympic sized yellow flag for me was, I'm like, I have never seen royalties written up before like this ever.
Yeah, one thought on that is about like royalties and streaming deals. So it's not gonna be a perfect example of this, but like a lot of Wheaton and like Franco Nevada and the gold and silver space royalty deals aren't actually with gold and silver companies. It's with the byproduct companies. So it's not gonna be a perfect example because they wouldn't need the capital really. But think BHP. They're actually like, I think the third biggest uranium producer in the world, but it's such a small part of their business they don't care. So think about somebody else with a deposit like BHP that's maybe copper that has some uranium. They would take money from Royalty Corp, Franco-Nevada, somebody like that, to finance their mine, and then they just basically give the production just in exchange for that. So there is opportunities for royalty and streaming stuff that you just never expect. But I have no opinion on that specific company.
But you'd be getting a royalty from Cameco, which is all uranium, to Uranium Royalty Corp. I think that's kind of a little bit different, but I totally agree and understand what you're saying, Austin. It's just some of these other gold streamers I've seen before. You know, they get multiple gold mines, and you get a lot of these gold mines that actually get into production once they're deemed to be viable. You know, how many gold mines are out there in the world producing? How many uranium mines are out there in the world producing? It's a lot less. You know, so it's just like when I ask Uranium about how many you think will actually be a cash stream, it's got to be on the very low side. You know, most of the people are going to generate cash are just the restarted mines that were already operating mines, except for maybe like 2 or 3 in the next 3 years. You know, I just don't see it from a lot of these uranium miners.
Yeah, I think that's when I was briefly looking at Uranium Royalty Corp, I was sort of like, what's going on here? It just seemed to be one of those things where it's like, I mean, I guess just coming from my perspective of, my rules of investing, which is that before I put any sort of major positions into anything, really, I would not say this is sort of a rule going forward, is that I need to do a cash flow projection for them. And I would have a hard time figuring out that, because that would take a moment where you're just sort of going through there and you're just trying to have to figure out everything. It's just like, sheesh. I don't know. So,
But I would also add that, if anybody can look while we're sitting here, I'd be interested to know what the price action of URC has been like, because, kind of looking back on my time in uranium, and I've been here since January of 2019, I think that I probably have been, to be critical of myself, I think I have been at times too focused on fundamentals, and I realize now, having lived through the everything bubble, and even my theory is that the everything bubble was so thoroughly completely developed to its fullest extent that even uranium became a meme stock, and in my view. And so I if there are times now where I do want to know the fundamental values of the fundamental basis for investing in any stock or whatever. But I'm also far more keen and attuned to, like, which plays are getting the most hype, or which plays you might say folks are getting herded into or hurting themselves into, because I get that now. So there are things that affect price action that can be far more important than the fundamentals in a meme investing type environment, is my view. Which my view is also that that's gone. We'll see. But I'm curious if anybody could tell us, like, what did URC do in the past, post March of 2020? Were there multiples, or was it just kind of plain Jane? Anybody have any info on that?
well, anyone?
Give me a second. I'll get my trading view up and I'll take a look.
I know, because I will say that UEC had phenomenal, at times phenomenal price action, being a relatively larger junior miner, being a relatively larger uranium junior miner, which I feel like that the paper gains at times were far higher than, kind of more akin to far lower market caps. And so I think you can credit, Amir, however you want to pronounce it, Amir for doing, a lot of the work to like just super promote that company and uh, and
Well,
with the
It,
acquisitions,
it,
etc.
it's
It was well
yeah.
done in that way.
if
I
you go back
mean,
to
So
the March
I wouldn't be
2020 look,
surprised. My point though is I wouldn't be surprised if, because Amir was involved with because he runs URC, I wouldn't be surprised if that had a surprisingly good result in the last 3 years. Let's just say almost 3 years of time.
on a weekly chart, if you go back to the March 2020 lows, you're looking, it's saying like 60 cents, 64 cents for like open closes. 56 cents was a low one week. I'm looking at a weekly chart, and you're at 287. So you caught a little bit more than a five bagger at current prices. It got all the way up to 595 for the high back in October 21, October 25th. So I mean, it's had some good price action, but it's like every other stock. It looks like a head and shoulders, but it's not. I think this is something that will wind up curling up slowly. I think Andy from Finding Value has some good charts, and same with Mr. Wen Moon. I like watching that. I think his name's Scott. They've got some real interesting charts that show, from Ethereum and Bitcoin, where a lot of these uranium stocks are playing out in a very similar pattern. Shortly before a big launch. Part of it's this Livermore accumulation cylinder, but also part of it is just it plays out a little longer than people think, and then it starts to build momentum on itself. That's yet to be seen if it's going to play out like that, but the charts sure look like it. What is also funny I've seen in some charts is just one fractal and another big fractal, the same thing, playing out in just a slightly longer time series, but much more exaggerated. And if we get anything similar and get one repeat in a third, we could get some monster moves. So, I mean, I've got a couple charts. You guys can DM me, and I can send you the charts that I've made myself, just being a hack on TradingView. But there's some real interesting price action that you can see over a 3-year chart. And that's where you got to, when in doubt, zoom out and start looking at it that way. And, things are pretty telling despite this awful market action we've had, that we've created a nice little base and we're getting a little higher low in the last few weeks.
and this is where I would come
Oh
back
yeah.
and I would say, like, look, okay, congratulations. I sold everything. Oh, boo-hoo me. I'm going to miss out on everything. I'm not so sure about that. Take a look at UEC. All right. So the last time that Cameco was at this price level, hereabouts, UEC was trading at about $6. Well, UEC's at 420 right now. So, look, if this holds, there's a lot of essentially juniors action that, they're going to start, if the sector gets hot again, there's a lot of money. Just because I'm not going to be necessarily making all of it in Cameco, there's a lot of money to necessarily be made. I mean, you could go back and you can say the same thing about URG. The last time that Cameco was at this price level, URG was trading at about $1.80. So when people are saying to me that, like, oh, I'm gonna miss the, my solid entry points, I'm not so sure about that. So,
Well, Chapman, I'm in agreement with you, Chapman. It's just big money is going to go into the most big liquid thing first. And then the next tier will be some of these U.S. miners and some of the other big players around the world. And you got your other, kind of a bottom feeder tier. So it's a rotation.
Well, and then you get the effect of the ETFs, because they end up having to sort of sell down some of Cameco, and then they start having to buy more of these smaller players. So I think, this, you get maybe sometimes something of an outsized effect. Having said all that, though, because of the dilution, I am sort of now curious into my head here if the increased dilution is going to perhaps have some effect on the float. and if that's going to actually reduce the volatility just a little bit. I don't know. That's
Well,
something's popping in
well,
my head.
I can speak to one thing. If you're still talking about UEC as it relates to the ETFs, there's a possibility when they rebalance again with the merger with UEX that they're going to have to lighten the load a little bit and redistribute it amongst other issues within the ETF. There's that. And then when you have less liquid companies, or not a super liquid company, which is not the case with UEC, but I've seen it with a couple other companies that do a stock for stock merger. If one got paid a premium, it causes a giant drag on the buyer's stock for a while. And so I'm looking at kind of like the dogs of the Dow, which were the dogs of uranium stocks. Some of the better quality stocks have been poorer performers. And usually, if you really think about it, it's got a pretty easy story why. And so some of these guys could have even greater upside when the market really lights on fire, because you'll burn through all these sellers that, might have been the acquiree that's selling to the acquirer. Just like you were looking for cash as opposed to being bought out by stock.
I mean, it's not just UEC. It's the same story over and over again. Even global, folks. I mean, there's a lot of, if this sector does get hot again, and it truly does get hot again, there's a lot of upside here. So, and
I would
I
argue.
think, go on.
I would, and Chapman knows this. I would argue that just keep your eye on URG. All right, because URG is the least bullshit company in a large pile of dog shit, and they are real miners. They're conservatively run. That mill they have is like the brass is polished. They have 3 times the cash they need to put 1 million pounds back into production tomorrow. They can, they can bring an extra 1 million pounds back on. Whether or not they have all the money to do that, they might have to borrow a bit. They have 45 million in cash. I think it takes like 60 million to bring total. That's up to 2 million pounds production per year. And I'm not saying they're going to make money hand over fist, but they're lowest quartile cost producer in the world. The freaking CEO makes $300,000 fucking dollars instead of like 1.6 million for literally, a deposit on the west side of the Athabasca Basin. It's like, not even going to get developed this cycle unless there's insane overfeeding. I think that if you keep your eye on URG and their press releases, you can, and they're just straight shooters. I mean, they would tell you that they're very conservatively run. They don't live in Vancouver, which is always a blessing. They identify as miners, and it just has. You're gonna get a sense of they're gonna get filled early. They're not gonna hold out for $4,000 uranium. They're gonna get filled early, and you'll get a sense of where things are. Just keep URG on the radar.
I'm a shareholder of URG. I just wish they had a few more pounds in the ground by their deposit. I mean, by their mills.
Yeah.
URG's got all the operational excellence, and they've demonstrated the capability. But if you look at it like in the silver market, you want some real mojo stuff that could be mined. You look at a company like Discovery Silver, how many hundreds of millions of ounces they can get out of the ground. It's low grade and all that other stuff, just like URG is. They got 20 million pounds. Be a hell of a lot cooler if they had 30 or 40.
Oh, I know.
Well,
This is what
there's
made me
M&A.
so. This is what made
If
me.
anybody, we could this would be my dream come true. Like we get some sort of M&A talk on URG, because I don't know how culturally who they could hook up with and stuff like that. But yeah, I agree. I mean, they're building out. They've essentially built out. The wells right around what they have. It's all permitted,
Yeah.
and you're right. They don't have a gajillion pounds, but they have enough to extend the life of the mine, and it's just cheap, and it's all there's no hardcore promotion. I mean, it's just I feel like it's a working man's or a working person's uranium mining company.
Hmm. And going into
I think a
production.
possibility for URG, if they go on the M&A trails, there's a bunch of little companies popping up in and around them. If someone made a discovery, URG could take a nibble.
Yeah, I would agree. I would prefer, obviously I'd want them to look at an in situ play, preferably something similar to what they have now. Um, I mean, I think they've said they always have offers if people come in and around, and I think the one thing I do like about them is that they seem to understand the reasons to say no to something. Whereas I think you have some other companies in this business that are always just looking to add more pounds in the ground, whether they're going to be viable or not.
Right, they're not buying UEX, but
Yeah.
I would also be curious to know what people think in terms of how much money. So their news flow in the very immediate future is by the end of the month they're going to know how many they expect to be one of two, if not max three, uh, companies that are chosen by Energy to buy uh, inventory that's already in canned up and ready to go. So I'm curious to know what folks think that how much money they could get from that, and
$75 a pound,
that's
easy.
yep. So
Yeah,
so they're
I
gonna
think it's gonna be
have that.
75.
They're
That's
gonna
my
have
guess.
that, and here's my prediction is that they're gonna get that cash, and then they're also gonna by the end of the year potentially fill out a couple more orders, just like John Cash was saying, the CEO in this last interview. If they can get a couple more orders, they're going to justify restarting that mill. And I don't want to call it a mill for God's sakes, but they're going to justify restarting their operations, and that's going to be it's going to be interesting. I don't think that they have as much torque, because they're just going to sell it for lower. They don't. Like I said, the CEO makes $300,000 a year. They just don't live that kind of lifestyle. But they'll,
How much does Clenda pay himself on the board? Because
Clend is
he used to pay
gone.
him.
Clend is
He's
gone.
completely gone, even off the board.
Complete. Well, I think that he's completely gone because at no time in any interview have I heard that he's still on the board.
I mean, and
And
thing
so,
the thing to understand is that Shirley Basin is fully delineated. So for them, all they have to do is they know exactly where they're going to sink those wells.
mhm.
It's a higher grade deposit than Lost Creek. It's a smaller deposit, unfortunately, but it is higher grade. And the most important thing there is that it is fully delineated. They know that deposit like the back of their hand. They know exactly what to do with it. I think they're
I'm
going to
going to
get
Utah.
$75. I think they're going to get $75 a pound
I'm
for
going to
that.
Utah in October to
We'll
visit
see.
my kids. They both go to school in Salt Lake City. I'm over here in Vermont. And so I think that I'm gonna call John Cash and ask him to give me a tour, because I have
It's going to be a
pumped that stock
field.
enough. I've done enough pumping to justify a tour.
Give me a tour.
But my
I pumped
pumping
those
is
wells
is really,
enough.
I will tell you, my pumping of that company is actually like heartfelt. I dig everything they're doing.
Mm.
I just want them at 50 cents. Sorry.
Wait, how could you pump a stock if you want it to, if you're trying to deflate it a little bit? I don't
That's
know.
that's the reality.
I don't
That's
know.
I'm not I have my reasons for thinking that everything will come back to those prices,
I mean,
but
yeah. Well,
it's
yeah, it's just don't be afraid. Don't be surprised if you get a big market sell down. I think there's a certain point at which the the margin calls start rolling in, the funds stop, the funds, particularly the ones that might actually have some institutional ownership over Cameco, where they stop, they pull back the bid just a little bit, and they program the computers to, we're going to be selling now, and we're not going to be buying quite as aggressively, and all of a sudden, bonk. That said, I think everybody in here, they pay attention to their portfolio pretty well. I think everyone's going to be fine. You know, this is the. I guess I'll go back to like just to bring this back around. The one thing that really kind of got to me was it was sort of like, it felt like people were wishing a little bit of ill will on me. That you know, it almost got to like the have fun being poor bit of a meme there with Bitcoin. This was not convincing me to buy anything. I could just tell you that much. But yeah, I don't know. Just let's see that.
If I get a chance to buy,
most people only want the good news, and the second you start telling them something they don't want to hear, they'll turn on you.
Oh, I know, but see, you have to be if you want to be a serious investor and you want to actually make money, you always have to look. I'm hearing the good news, folks. People that I talk to. All right, I have a little chat on Twitter, and I call it bearish bulls or bullish bears. The whole point of it is actually not that you're bearish or bullish, but it is appreciating the indecisiveness that is at the heart of all traders. Nobody has the strongest conviction in the world. The one thing that I've really wanted to ask some people, but I don't because, again, we're in spaces, so you're going to get me a little bit unfiltered, was that, we see some things sell down, and I just want to sort of say to them, like, so you bought the dip today. You doubled your position, I bet. You fully, you believe in this so much that you took your margin account all the way to the max. You are ready to go. You believe in this so much. If not, you could cut me a little slack. That's all I'm saying. So
You've got to have faith. That's my point. So.
Well, Alex, we heard that you sold, and I'm afraid that I'm gonna have to report you to the I sold uranium police.
We're gonna have to reveal and cancel.
Corgi is gonna have a meme of you tomorrow, and oh man, it's not gonna be pretty. It's like how
I think here's the thing. I think about being a truly contrarian investor. One of the things that entails is taking everything that you think is true, not getting paralyzed by it, and that maybe I've done that to a fault. I can cop to some of that, but I also enjoy like rethinking everything. And you have to take everything you think if you're going to be a true contrarian and rethink it and turn it on its head and test it, as if to see if it's hollow or if there's something there, if it's true or if it's hollow. And I think that the more that you think that something's inevitable or that something has to happen or that something else can never happen, and my exhibit A for this is what I call the uranium shitco challenge. And what I want people to do is go back. You can find any ASX uranium explorer. This is any junior uranium junior miner except Cameco that existed from the last cycle, say 2007. We're going to call that the high, 2007 on. If you go back to any of the ones that are still around, either on the ASX or on the Canadian exchanges, find their 2007 high, because they all had a high in 2007, and then go out to 2011 and go out to any time in 2011. But you can use obviously, March, April, May, any time there where it was at that time that Cameco started coming back to their to their previous high, their 2007 high, really tracking the broad markets. And then between what we think anyway, between, well, obviously Fukushima, but even prior to Fukushima, what we think was the effect of underfeeding and enrichment, I believe is how it was described to me, had already in early 2011 started to do a number on even Cameco. But my point is, I would like anybody here listening, and DM me if you find this to be untrue. But you go back from you find that company, and you can find every single one, and you find their 2007 high, and you tell me that in 2011, before the entire market crapped itself, you tell me if any of them ever came back to that high again. So once they had topped in 2007, which was also the top of a speculative bubble, did they return to that high? And what I found is that the vast majority of them post their 2007 highs lost anywhere they never came back to anything closer to 50 or 75% below their 4 years later, they were 50 to 75% below where they were in 2007, and then it got worse from there. And so I think underlies my theory that, and I'm happy to be wrong, but that going forward, it's going to be the companies that have legitimate the meme investing things over, and it's real producers like Cameco and URG and CGN and Boss and Paladin, etc. And the superstar developers like Global. If we're going to let anybody in the club, that kind of thing, who you're going to see come back to those highs where they were, let's say, in the fall of 2021, and maybe blaze new trails. But I really don't see. I think that you have to question this assumption that all of these explorers are somehow going to not repeat what they did post 2007 in a far tighter financial environment where liquidity was not easy to come by, and speculative euphoria was absent. So that's just something, and if nothing else, and you want to, and you continue trading the explorers, knock yourself out, but just have the thought, because there's got to be 20, 25 companies that fit that bill. And my challenge to you is, I never found one of them, and I looked at every single one of them. So
Well,
question what you see as true.
well, I wanted to say there was two fundamental things going on back there that prevented any of the stocks to get to that 2011 high. One was the ascendancy of Kazatomprom. You went from virtually nothing to 60 million pounds over the course. I don't know. I don't want to quote the years. Probably 7 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And so
Definitely.
that put a major dent on any of these guys starting to really ramp up and get there, because one, they're pumping out the pounds. Two, the Kazakh tenge was rapidly devaluing, putting all these U.S. producers out of business. It's the same thing with Canada. They could just do it for cheaper and just take market share from everybody. And you still had the megatons for megawatts program going on at the same time as well. So it wasn't helping, and it was going through the whole time,
Yeah.
but it didn't let that market recover like it could have.
So, yeah, and absolutely. Let me give everybody else another thing to be mindful of as well. I know, God, we're all going on the bear cases. I'm sorry. I know. Everyone's going to be saying, like, oh my God, it's another bear spaces. Oh, sheesh, whatever.
Don't worry, I'll bring it back at the end.
Oh, good. Alex is going to close us out, because I think Alex, how are you feeling? Do you want to end it here in the next couple minutes? We're at 2 hours.
Well,
I think it's
we
good.
want to invite anyone else that wants to come up. Anyone
Also,
else
is
that
that
wants to
well?
jump up.
That as well. Yeah, so we can do that. But I would say this is why you want to buy everything cheap. Why you want to have the patience to wait for everything to basically come to your price, because I think it is going to come to your price. You never know. It's hard to predict the future, but the gains you will have is sometimes better when you wait for the price to come to you, rather than, buying high and maybe selling just a little bit higher. Who knows? Uh, let's just imagine for a moment that another Kazatomprom is discovered. What happens?
Are you talking about Uzbekistan? Oh, sorry.
Or it could be Uzbekistan. It could be something in who knows where. Botswana. It doesn't matter. I mean, seriously, when you start looking for uranium, it becomes one of those rare earths elements that you find out is not exactly all that rare. And, guess what? All of a sudden, maybe we find another, billion pounds of uranium someplace. What exactly? A billion pounds of uranium that can be mined and you can high grade it via in situ, and it costs you $10 or $12 to mine. What happens to Cameco again? Oh shit. We are back in another lost decade. You add in the cheap pounds, not quite as cheap, granted. Kazatomprom is about up to, I think, $17, $18 per pound production now. And you add that in, and all of a sudden, crap. I mean, I'm being totally serious here. These are things that you sort of have to look out for, and these are things that, this market has a tendency of surprising you. And I was seeing something like, some people are calling me cheapy chappy or whatever else. It's fine. You know what? I think Rick Rule would agree with me. There's a dude, there's a lot of people, the people that have a lot of money in this space, that have made a lot of money in mining. They're vultures. You need to be a vulture too. You need to go in and you need to buy these mines when they are cheap and have the patience to wait for them to be cheap. Now, maybe that doesn't happen. You never know, but at the same time, that's just my perspective on things. So,
hey Chapman, one thing on that, I can vouch for it. I happened to be talking to Chapman at the time, but that day, maybe a week and a half ago, on the big options expiration date, when Cameco was just red and it was just plummeting the entire day, like it was down like 8.5%. Like Chapman was writing checks, I was writing checks, a couple other guys in group chats, we were writing checks. Like I made the same decision with Chapman, right? Like after the initial run, like we were up 20% on that in, I don't know, a week's time, less than a week. So we took some of the gains on that one, right? Like I'm pretty sure that if Cameco falls back to where Chapman thinks is valuable, he's gonna be writing checks again. I would like for somebody to go through just in their brokerage accounts or just like in the order volume, like charts, and show where they were buying Cameco when it was down 8.5%, and all the technical charts said that it was going to go to its long-term support or intermediate term support at $20, right? The man was writing checks then when it was fundamentally valued. So was I. And
yeah, totally.
I think he'll do it again.
Yeah, like it's like I was just waiting for that to happen. Like Cameco to come back down to 2250, like all day, every day. I will buy that. I mean, and yeah, I remember that conversation with Austin. We were like, man, Cameco could go lower, and I was like, no, I don't think it is. And sure enough, it didn't. So
I had a different experience with Cameco 2 years ago, maybe close to it. I was buying. I bought 1,000 calls of Cameco stock when it was like around $10-11, and I just didn't buy. I was too cheap. I just didn't buy far enough out the curve. Where if I just would, sat in for another month or two, spectacular gains would have been had. Instead, losses. So I understand, like, when you're getting in and getting out, even when you're directionally right, it's hard to make money and do it well. And that vulture strategy is really the best strategy to do it. You just got to buy when everyone's sick. And then, just sit there and wait it out. And it's just that time duration. Sometimes options with uranium is just not fun because it doesn't move when you think it should move.
I agree to that. I agree with that as well. I was sort of thinking about this the other day, where I was gonna be, I was gonna have a tweet where, I was gonna, make certain people upset because if Cameco did go down, but it didn't go down far enough, I was gonna have some tweet say, yeah, I went 90% cash, and I'm not even buying the dip, and like, oh no, he's not. Just wondering about how that would react in people's heads, but oh boy.
Question for
Hey Eric,
Eric.
would you mind I'd be curious. Like, you clearly have a lot of experience in this market, been in it a long time. Like, would you be comfortable sharing just like kind of like what do you own, like roughly?
I don't want to talk about the amounts that I own. I don't feel
Oh, I
comfortable.
mean
Like,
companies. I mean,
okay, in the uranium space, uh, Your Energy, Western, Encore Energy, Fission 3.0 is a spec. I think they might be onto something. They're not too far away from that ISO deposit up there. Um, Trying to think. I have a little smattering of Light Bridge, and that's about it. I'm pretty concentrated, just like when I talked about in the first call. American producers, and again, it's low capex. I want the lowest capex or stuff that's ready to go. Developers and low cost. What they see to be low cost production, and just let it roll from there.
Eric, what do you think if support broke for Cameco? Where do you see it uh, going to? What would $10 again surprise you? What
It
what
would
kind
have
of
to be in
what
a
kind of
pot.
vulture? What do you see for vulturing Cameco? I mean, just wild scenarios or high
It's gonna.
probability.
I think it's gonna be hard to be a good vulture in Cameco. And what's your definition of being a vulture, right? Is it a 30 or 40% decline? The wheels would have to come off the world for that to happen now. Just given the environment where people are looking at nuclear and uranium, I mean, big drawdowns are possible. We just saw one. I took a 50% drawdown in my portfolio from November. That's something it's hard to stomach. I've had 50% drawdowns before, but not at that dollar volume. Or I mean, to what I see on my screen. I could see Cameco taking a 10, 15, 20% dip on market action, but the strongest will always come back the fastest, and it will be the first one to come back. So if you see something that is in the 15+% range, scaling is always a good thing. And when I start scaling, I'm looking at 5 tranches at 20% each. Stealing the stuff just right from Jesse Livermore from back in the day. Because that's a good way to protect yourself. You don't feel bad buying lower if you keep doing 20%. And if you get the right tape action, the right setup, or the right news, then don't be afraid to be a plunger, and put some real money to work. You're buying the best company in the space in terms of safest, most liquid, biggest capital, proven pounds on the ground, proven operator. I wouldn't be afraid to, march on in there in a serious way. And you really feel good about it, lever up and buy some calls and, buy them out a couple months.
Right. So 22 on Cameco is like, that's significantly down from where it is today.
It's just 20%.
Yeah.
Thereabout.
Yeah. So,
But,
I'm not looking at the chart now. I'm in another room, but, I'll take your word as, that's the big initial probably support level.
Yeah.
Right.
I think
Okay.
so too. I don't think it's
And do you
going lower
see
than
it?
that.
Do you see it
Wow.
going lower than that?
I can't.
Okay.
Because
I would just go on record
I
as
don't
saying
don't
that
see
I
the
do.
spot price of uranium going lower than it is right now. We
Right.
can see the equities go down.
I don't think that we've hit. I don't think that the psychology of bear markets has hit people yet. And so if that plays out, I see Cameco at $10 like overnight. And so, but that would all be because I don't think anything survives that. If we're at 3,400,
Brett, are you gonna blow up a nuclear reactor along with that price too?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm trying to tell you is bear markets are slow grinders that beat the shit out of you out of 2 years. I went through that whole 2000 and 2002 in the .com era, right?
Yep.
Tried to raise capital during that time when building hit, September 11th when the Trade Center got hit. I'm out there trying to raise money for a startup that I was a part of. So I've seen what destruction looks like, and that still took 2 years. So I don't see this mega meltdown stuff. We're not going to shut off the world of liquidity and have a 1930 to 29 to 31 bear market, these guys will wind up printing at some point in time, and that'll just spread the pain out over a longer time series. You'll still get to the same result.
Well, yeah.
It'll just take longer.
Well, okay. Again, everyone's like the Fed pivoting and starting to print money. Like that means crash is imminent. Just everyone remember that, please. I mean,
you don't have in a global economy though. It doesn't have to just be the Fed.
yeah,
You could have ECB printing, China printing,
yeah.
Japan printing, and still add a lot of money to global liquidity,
Well,
and then it's wherever the hot money goes.
And it's not just because they're printing that, you think like, oh yeah, liquidity is going to come back into the market. People have to realize, okay, why are they printing? That's because the market or the economy is in trouble. I mean, that is to the savvy investor, they understand that when the Fed pivots, that means economy is in trouble. We need to inject liquidity back into the market because the pain is coming here in fairly short order. So you will have sell-offs. You will always had a sell-off in a pivot. People need to please remember this. This is not the time. This is time when you hear pivot and you know that the pivot's happening. I would just advise everyone, please be cautious.
Without being your fiduciary.
Without being your fiduciary. This is just look. I have a tendency of giving people just some advice here, and I would just say like look over and over in time and history again. The pivot is everyone's been saying, oh yeah, the Fed's gonna pivot, and they're celebrating this, and I'm like, no, you do not want to be celebrating a pivot. Pivots are bad.
Well, you celebrate pivots more in the commodity space, in particular in gold and silver. But in the general market, you're
absolutely.
getting creamed.
This is, I'll just let everybody know, the one thing I have not sold is Silvercrest metals.
Man. This is a perfect segue for Liberty, who can maybe just like come in and not depress everybody with some maybe hopefully bullish technical talk. One thing on this that I can't really wrap my head around is this like, why are we so focused on the monetary pivot when all I've heard for just like the last 2 years and the last decade is QE and the monetary side. Oh, that doesn't drive inflation defined as consumer prices. It's the fiscal side. So it's when we did all these things on the fiscal side throughout COVID, that drove inflation. What's happening now? We have large parts of the world who are quite literally printing money to buy energy. That's about the most inflationary thing I can imagine.
Austin, yeah. So the reason why you didn't see inflation from at the central bank level is because it went to the banks who didn't put the money in the system. They were going out and doing reverse repos or whatever they were doing to make minimal return, but they weren't pumping that money into the system.
They're sitting on massive reserve. They're sitting on massive reserves, and now they're getting paid interest to keep it there.
And what did we do with the fiscal side? We gave stimmy checks, and you saw a bunch of people standing out in front of Chanel, Louis Vuitton, and Gucci with stanchion lines at every mall in America. And never seen that before. And it's, hey, I got a free money. I'm going to go buy that Italian purse. I'm going to go buy a car part if I'm a guy.
There you go.
And that caused inflation out the yin yang.
Because exactly.
I completely agree with you. And maybe let me re-clarify that. It's like, I'm with you. I actually don't think QE is inflationary at all defined as consumer prices. Asset prices, perhaps. But it's more just like, it's like a logical disconnect that I'm seeing that like all these really smart people out here are saying, oh, there's no liquidity right now. Inflation has to continue dropping like a bomb because the Fed's doing QT. You can't both say that QE is not inflationary and that fiscal is inflationary and then say, okay, inflation is going to be solved because we're doing QT, but we're doing the fiscal side already, quite literally printing money for energy. It's nuts.
So let me tell you what I see happening in Europe. What they're not saying, we need to go out and build more coal, restart natural gas plants, add more nuclear, restart nuclear, and just anything like, the Trump administration used to say, what is it? From all sources, they get energy. I forgot what the keyword term was that they had. But no, what they're going to do is subsidize the consumer to keep their energy bills down, to placate them through the wintertime, which if you're giving people direct spend into their accounts to be able to pay their electricity bills, they're not going to change their behavior. And all you're going to do is get a further acceleration in prices and energy. And so that will be incredibly inflationary in energy. And what do? They say, you oil companies, you're the bad people. We're going to hit you with a windfall profit tax. Same with you nat gas companies. You're the ones screwing us. The only safe haven, well, two of them actually, is nuclear, where they're not putting the boogeyman on us with the windfall profit tax, and two, people still investing in wind and solar because that's what they love.
Well, and
Oh, I'm with you. That's
I would,
exactly what got me so bullish on gold and silver again. And after this comment, I'll shut up for a while. But like, that's exactly what got me so bullish on gold and silver. Just exactly what you just said is one of the most inflationary things I could make up, and it's honestly kind of scary.
yeah, and
I
I
would
would
also
agree
add
with that.
that I would
Go
also
ahead.
add that the best way it was explained to me why QE was actually deflationary, since we had zero, lower bound for percent. What we did swapped, or the central bank swapped cash, zero gearing, instruments for something that actually threw off cash and essentially deprived the private sector of the returns that you would that 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 they had originally bought. And so in that way, coming out of the system, or at least you didn't take out the system per se, but you get to decide what to do with it. You gave whatever returns those borrowing, you actually gave it to the government and took it away. The lending sector, and that in itself is, and once we started having above zero interest rates, then all that they now to essentially, and they're happy, super well capitalized, sitting on massive mountains of reserves and getting paid some sort of a return for sitting there looking at it.
Well, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I mean, energy is money, money is energy. The only time we've ever even had an inflationary problem throughout history has been during energy crises. I mean, 72, 79, and now this year. Um, so, I mean, yeah, I agree with the whole stimmy check things. I mean, that was the stimmy checks were basically a ticking time bomb sort of waiting to happen. It was sort of delayed in a lot of ways because the economy was shut down at the time. Because you weren't necessarily, you were the stimmy checks were, let's just say, like clearing inventory almost. And then when you had to, it's sort of like putting everything on a credit card. And I know a lot of people like, that's not to say like, oh yeah, the national debt is like a credit card. I'm not saying that. So you can have that opinion. I'm not contesting that though. But it's like, people going out and they're buying washing machines. Well, as Eric said, or buying, Gucci purses or something else, or a car part if they're a guy, or a washing machine. Who knows? But then when it comes time around to start making that again, and all of a sudden you come to the head of an energy crisis, then you have a real problem. Now, granted, if we were investing in energy like we had, if we were, doing the kinds of things that we should have been doing a decade ago, which, if we had built the 30 or so reactors that we were planning on building in 2010, and properly invested in transition fuels like oil and gas. I know it's a hard thing to say. Transition fuels, yes, transition is oil and gas because you don't have any other option. Then we might have gotten out of that. We might have gotten away with that, actually, but we just, or we would maybe have had some inflation, but maybe not a lot. But now all of a sudden, you start getting the contagion effect that I call it, where you get energy prices that are higher. All of a sudden, energy prices that are higher, they're passed off into, other costs. Like all of a sudden, you've got these higher energy prices. So you're like in Italy, where you're not able to run your damn refrigerators. I mean, this is getting ridiculous. And then, all of a sudden you've got cafes that, are now thinking about the fact that they have to close because their energy bills went from, 20 grand a month to 90 grand a month. I mean, it's kind of crazy. And then you have this add-on contagion effect where all of a sudden then people have, they have less money, and then that compounds the inflation of everything else is going up in price. And then it all really starts to come back to food, where you're in the midst of this, war on fertilizer. Because apparently now nitrogen is a freaking problem. I guess, I know, you get some algae blooms. All right, you know what, fine. I'll deal with the algae blooms. We'll put some algae killing chemicals in the rivers or something. I don't know. We'll figure it out. At the same time, I want to feed the planet. So now we're having the prospect of, people dying from mass starvation again. I got tired of, I remember going up on seeing those commercials and, like, oh, feed a child for 25 cents. And, I haven't seen a lot of those in a while. It seemed like we had figured this out. Apparently not. So, like I said, nothing is for free. And there's, I guess, was it Moore's Law, Murphy's Law, or something like that? If something's going to go wrong, it is. And, yeah, I think the time just sort of ran out on... The time basically just ran out on the clock of Western governments trying to have their cake and eat it too. They want to save the planet. They want to feel good. They want to kill 1 billion people. It's all the same. But yeah. So, Liberty, talk to us. Do you have something more bearish, or sorry, not bearish, or Alex, do you have something bullish? Or
I was just gonna say, I bought a Gucci brand washing machine with my money. That's what I did. But another thing too to look at is all these PPE loans. I mean, they have a website. You just look up PPE loans. You put in your zip code, and you would be shocked at some of the loans that were just given out.
I had clients, all of my small business clients in my tax business, they all had PPE loans.
And forgiven.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And many of them even took the SBA loans because they're just such low interest. I mean, they took those and they were like, I had a client that was like, oh, yeah. I mean, he's starting to look at the interest rate and it's like, yeah, I don't have to pay this off for like so many numbers of years. This is like free money. Yeah, so there you go. Absolutely.
Liberty, jump on here if you got a minute.
Yeah, what's up, fellas? Yeah, I actually forgot that this was moved back to Tuesday, so I just remembered, like, oh yeah, let me get in there. But yeah, QE obviously is inflationary. That's the definition of inflation. You're expanding the money supply, and that's what inflation is. I think the reason you didn't see it in the past is because this inflation all went to assets like the stock market. The average everyday person didn't have access to this, so it didn't make it into everyday goods. But this inflation has been apparent for a long time. It just hasn't been obvious where most people missed it. But this is clear. I mean, look, when your debt to GDP, it gets up to 135%, you're obviously living beyond your means, and you're living beyond your means because you're borrowing money, which means you're borrowing from your future. And one day that future arrives, and that future isn't in the future, it's today. And that's how you get to these crises like this, is because one day it all catches up to you because you're living beyond your means today. And so this is where we run into these energy crunches. This is what happened in the 70s too. So I actually disagree with Chapman. This is a monetary issue. It's not an energy issue. The energy issue is secondary because we have brought forward demand to today, right? If you didn't have all of this expansion of the money supply, chasing goods and creating artificial booms, you wouldn't have the need for energy that we have today. So we have brought forward the future to today. So without that cheap money, it would have been better allocated. But because you had loose money, because you had cheap money, because you had essentially zero cost money, right? It was misallocated. It was very risky, and now we are paying for it. And this is what happened in the 70s too. This is what Arthur Burns did. He took interest rates down very low, and you had a bunch of malinvestment, and we lived beyond our means, and it caught up to us, right? And then we had a problem with energy. And the solution went back then, of course, as you probably know, Volcker took interest rates over 20%. But you can't do that today because we have too much debt, and this is the problem. See, inflation is a monetary issue. Inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. And so, yes, energy is the choke point that kind of puts things to a halt, right? But it is not the reason for it, right? We have, I mean, just think about immigration, for example. You couldn't have been able to immigrate all these people into this country if there was nothing for them to do. Well, there wouldn't have been anything for them to do if you hadn't brought all the work in the future forward, right? And you did that with all of this money, right? You stimulated the economy with all of this stimulus over and over and over and over. And so again, you brought the future forward. And we finally reached a point where there's a choke point, and it's energy. And so this is why the Fed is stuck. And the Fed is stuck because they have so much debt, or the federal government has so much debt, that the Fed itself can't fund the government if interest rates get too high. But that's exactly what the Fed needs to do to quell inflation, right? The only option is to, take away all of your welfare checks and all of your government cheese and all that kind of stuff, and raise your taxes. Go pure austerity. So obviously they're not going to do that, and they're not going to allow a depression, which would work too. A depression would work, but you know that your politicians aren't going to stand by and do nothing, right? As the world falls apart, they're going to step in and represent their citizens, right? So this is what Austin had alluded to earlier. This is what most people are overlooking and misunderstand, is that the Fed's fight is done. It's over. Right? They have reached peak jawbone. They've done all the damage that they can possibly do. This is a mathematical game. And you have to understand that the damage is on the fiscal side. And all of this money is absolutely coming, because the sneaky thing is that the government needs inflation, right? So I have made the point in the past that why this is unsustainable is because as you have a federal government who takes in tax receipts from we the people, right? Well, as the Fed nukes the economy, nukes asset prices, nukes the stock market, and this is on a local state level too, the governments are going to take in fewer revenues. They're going to take in fewer tax receipts as the cost to make up the difference in terms of borrowing goes up. So this is a real problem. Well, the tricky thing is that government tax receipts this year are an all-time high, and it's because of inflation. And this is how they managed to get the debt down from 135 back to 123, because you're paying for it through an invisible tax called inflation. And this is the plan. Do not mistake it. This is their only way out, kind of while keeping the wheels on the car, right? Because if they let the wheels fall off the car, then you're going to be pretty pissed off. And there is no politician in Washington who is not well aware that they will swing from lamppost if they allow this country to go into a depression. All you have to do is look around the country and see the revolutions rising up one by one by one by one. And people are getting pissed off. And remember, this is all happening on the backbone of what was all taking place right before that stupid virus came. Remember all the yellow jackets? Remember all of these protests standing up all over the world? I mean, you
Murder
saw them in Hong
hornets.
Kong. People were started standing up globally, and you started to see these kind of nationalist movements coming up, and then all of a sudden this virus came and it quelled all that. But this didn't disappear. These sentiments didn't go away, especially after these authoritarian movements came with these lockdowns and stuff, which pissed people off even more, right? And so this resentment towards government is building back up. So if you think for a second these people are going to let everything collapse, you're insane. All right, they're about to print more money than God has ever seen, ever, ever, and they can't do it with 10% interest rate. So get over it; it ain't happening, right? So you just have to deal with what's next, and you're just going to have to deal with a stagflation that's going to hurt for a long time, and you're probably going to have to live with it long enough for them to manage this debt, and it could take 10, 20 years, and that's just the reality of the situation. And it's not doom and gloom. It ain't like the world's going to end, but things could, it's like I make I say it a lot. I say we've eaten the fattened calf, right? It's from the Bible. We've eaten the fattened calf, right? We've already had the best one, right? We've had the best meat. And so best of times, in a way, are behind us, at least for a while, right? We have reached peak energy. We have reached peak debt. We have reached peak political stupidity. And so this is a culmination of crisis ahead of us here. But make no mistake, anytime you print money, that is inflationary, right? That's just how it works. That money makes its way out somewhere. And go ahead, Eric.
Oh, I was going to say, I agree with you on most of your points. You know, I got an econ degree from the University of Texas, and you were spitting some Milton Friedman there earlier.
A lot of Texans up here right now, actually.
Yeah. So, what I was going to say, you know, looking forward, most of the stuff you're saying, I completely agree with. We could have some dislocations, though, in the immediate future. You know, things that I'm looking for is Italy's exit out of the EU. That's a real possibility, just like a Brexit. You start to have a disintegration of the European Union, you're going to see some wild things in the markets that I can't even, the knock on effects, I can't even get my arms around right now.
That's a good point. I think you're over the target there.
Number two, China is bidding more for silver in China on the Shanghai Gold Exchange than is being sold than LBMA and the COMEX. You're seeing big drains of gold and silver happening out of both exchanges by banks, by people making risk-free trades, moving that money, that physical metal east by design. Something could happen with the LBMA and the COMEX for real. You know, where they've always been able to stave it off. You might see them shut. I don't know what'll happen. And then the third thing is Saudi Arabia joins the BRICS and starts accepting money in yuan or ruble for their oil. And you can see real wild things happen with the DXY, with just the US dollar in general. You know, you can see some incredible inflation here. You know, and all roads at that point in time would lead to a much, much higher gold price. Europe needs it to backstop their economy because they've got 11,000 tons of gold. We all have an idea of what China has, you know, 20, 30, 40,000 tons plus. And whatever the U.S. has rat holed away, you know, one of the things that could happen later on is some of these miners that we own could get privatized. You know, you see the same thing in Canada. Canada doesn't have any physical gold resources, but they do have the spot physical trust up there. Maybe can't, and it's held at the Royal Canadian Mint. Maybe they say, we'll pay you in cash for your holdings. Thank you. You know, who knows what could happen going down the road, but these are all probabilities, but any one of them could be a huge seismic thing. And there's stuff that could be yet to come that we can't even predict yet.
Well, I will. First of all, I'm going to say thank you, Liberty, because you're the first person that has ever pushed back on me saying that energy is inflation and inflation is energy. I think this is adding to the conversation, and I am thankful someone has finally done that, because most people don't, actually. I will say that I am on board. I do think that an EU breakup is something that, you know, I think that's on the cards. I would not be surprised if you have another exit from one of the larger economies here fairly soon. I think Italy, I would agree, is probably a prime target. I do not believe Saudi Arabia will join the BRICS. I would be shocked if that happened, because that would mean that the House of Saud is giving up their greatest protector, and that is the U.S. Navy. I don't think they will do that. I think the deal will be worked out, and the alliance that has existed between the U.S. Navy and the House of Saud will continue. That being all said, I wouldn't be surprised if gold and silver prices go up. So that's where I stand on all the things here.
Oh, they're about to go up. They're about to go up a lot.
One thing people miss, like it's not going to take like some moonshot $100 silver to make you some money on this. these things are so beaten down that
Oh, I
if you just
know.
return to say $25, $26 silver
Yeah.
sometime in 2023, which I think is like
Whew.
not an aggressive statement at all, something like First Majestic, unless something crazy happens, you're making a double without a doubt, maybe two and a half, triple, just on say $27 silver. So like
Yep,
these things are
absolutely.
so
Just
oversold.
hope uranium pops first.
And
Uranium
Yeah,
go first to
I
housing.
know.
That's what I want.
well, and I
And
think silver is has far more upside than gold does right now, which is why I'm more interested in silver actually.
Yes.
although I wouldn't knock First Majestic's Jarrett Canyon prospect, I mean, some of those drill hits they're having are pretty amazing over there. And you're getting the
Yeah.
best of both worlds with First Majestic on that.
It's a
After
great
all the
company.
crap they took for that purchase, and now it's quite literally a gold mine, right? I mean, it's just Keith Neumeyer did it again. I love this company so much.
And they're cheap as hell right now. Every time that
Yes.
silver drops, people look like, hey, they're a high cost producer. We need to sell the crap out of this thing, right? They're just crazy cheap. Like, if you think that silver's staying at $17, you shouldn't buy it because they're going to have balance sheet issues. If you believe silver's even going back to 25, in my opinion, you should buy this.
I mean, that's where I come back to what is exciting to me about silver, and that silver goes up to like $30, and I think some of these mines triple in value. I think
Oh yeah.
even not more potentially. Whereas if uranium even goes up to like 90, well, maybe Cameco doubles. I don't know, but I think there's a lot more upside in silver at the moment. I mean, we'll see. I think uranium is going to make some money here, obviously, but I don't know. Silver is just that's the one that's exciting me right now a little bit. I'm going to be.
I love them both. I can't choose one. It's either one or the other. That's it.
I will say the one thing I have not sold is a silver mine. It's like I haven't sold that one mostly because, frankly, I mean, Silvercrest seems to be holding its own here. I mean, it's so beaten down at this point. It's sort of like I think some of it, I think some of these silver plays right now, if you guys are, and if anyone in here is in the room, like, hey, come to Liberty and Alex's gold and silver spaces, start doing some research on gold and silver. I think some of those prospects are those opportunities are just they're prime right now, much more prime than I think some of these uranium targets are.
And again, we're kind of way off topic, but
oh, I know
man,
we're now
John
actually.
Durrett,
What do you mean? This
John
is
Durrett is like the one to follow. Like, man, that guy is like, man, he is just an expert. Like, he just knows them off the top of his head. I mean, we had him on a space there, and you could just name any company, and he just and there's a lot more. There's a lot more gold and silver companies, but he just knows all of them off the top of his head. It's like, oh, that's a 5-bagger, that's a 4-bagger, just like that. So he's one of my favorites.
Well, I'll have to ask him what he thinks about ADT. Because that's my
We'll be
favorite
back
one.
on with it.
Adriatic metals. It's like
We'll be back on with us after the next Fed hike.
okay, well, cool. I'm gonna ask him about ADT. I hope he has an answer because not many people do. Nobody has an answer about ADT. It seems to be the one that's just totally flying under the radar. So
Guys, bring us back to uranium. There is
Thank you,
one
Austin.
company that is in both gold and uranium. Any guesses
Kraken.
what that is? Kraken Energy. That is the play. It is gold. It's uranium. It is the stock of the future.
It is the uranium.
Or you could go with Valor that's got uranium and platinum.
Holy shit! Damn. Bitcoin is at 18,644. Wow.
So how
Yeah,
low
the
do you
US
think
support too.
Bitcoin's going to go? 12?
Where's
For
Bitcoin
Liberty,
going?
that is. Yeah, for Liberty also. Do you think it may be like 12?
I've been saying 6,000, but Liberty, what do you say?
Well, I'm looking at the chart right here. Its next test is going to be about 14. It's got a pretty weak trend line at about 15.5, but its real support's about 12.5, and we'll see how it reacts there. But let me zoom in on the monthly.
One of your favorite traders, Gareth Soloway, like right at the top, he called it and just said this thing is going to go down like to 20,000 at least, and maybe 12. And he did it on Kitco News, just a big, huge platform. And I'm sure everyone was just looking at him like, "What are you talking about?" But he's dead on the money on that trade.
If we get that 10,000 support, I'm in for the first time. I'm telling you, I'm in, baby.
Oh, no, I'm not touching that thing. No. If see, the thing
Well,
is, if it keeps falling, the only thing that says to me is that it's gonna keep falling, and eventually we're gonna get to the point of one Bitcoin to $1.
well, most people don't know this, and even when I tell them, they don't believe it. But the Bitcoin almost has a 1-to-1 correlation with the Fed balance sheet. So anytime they're expanding it, it goes up. Anytime they start whispering about reducing it, that's when it starts to roll over. And Bitcoin was a good indicator of the market peak.
Yeah.
And actually,
Oh
Bitcoin
yeah.
is one of the best broad market indicators there is.
Yeah. I mean, it to me, it's a huge off risk indicator, and on risk indicator as well.
Luke Groman's got a great take on this. If you guys ever listen to him, he says that it's the last functioning smoke alarm, and what he means by that is gold and silver. There's just so much, let's just say, futures activity and whatnot that it can be a little more signal than noise. But I think he puts it well. It's the last functioning smoke alarm, and I think that's fair.
And I dig that.
Yeah, and I'd hate to say this too, but well, guys, uranium sell downs have a fairly, they correlate with these sell downs in Bitcoin, but then again, they also correlate with the broad market sell downs as well. Again, the only thing I'm saying, folks, don't crucify me again, please. I've been crucified enough. Is just to say, look, just be careful. Like, watch this like a hawk. Know what your sell points are. Know what your buy points are. And, don't be afraid to protect your assets. So
I feel that uranium's, one of those Momo stocks, like, or, Momo issues where guys like Jesse Steen follow it, and he would talk about the momentum. When momentum's in a particular issue or a sector, the momentum stocks get creamed first before everyone else, so you don't get a signal. If uranium's going down, then you can forecast the rest of the market will go down shortly thereafterwards.
I mean, it's gone down. I mean, I had a chart on this, on proven reserves.
The charts look awful. The charts show a lot of weakness, a lot of divergence, a lot of failed breakouts. It doesn't look good. Every single day it gets a little bit worse.
Yeah,
Wait,
I
which
mean,
chart?
that's the thing that I've been feeling. I mean, I'd hate to. I mean, I don't really engage in the Twitter part of that, but it's like, for me, just operating purely on intuition. Every time that I see Cameco, fail to break out above 2940, and it gets sold down every single time, I'm just like, guys, one of these days it's either going to break up higher or it's going to break down lower. The move is going to be violent in either direction, and I don't know. And I feel like it's a coin flip, honestly, at this point. I don't know. What do you
It
feel
just
about
depends on how tight the range. It depends on how tight the range is. If it's a tight range, it's more likely to break higher. If it's real loose and sloppy, you'll probably break lower.
I mean, the range is between. Basically, it's been selling. The range has been between 2840 and 2940. It goes a little higher sometimes. I mean, it went above 30 today. I think we go all the way to 31 or something. Very briefly, I think, and it's it rejects those pretty hard. It doesn't even act like it wants to stay there. It just is just totally, like, no, I'm selling. So yeah, well, no, we didn't make. We made it to 3073. Looks like. But I mean, you smack a line across the chart, and you put it just at 2940, and it just the moment it gets up there, it might go a little bit higher, but it's selling in fairly short order. And then you put another line on the chart at about 2840, and yeah, it goes that low, and it always buys right back up. So, you know.
So Chapman, one thing I would suggest doing, and I've done it on some of these uranium charts, like Encore is a perfect example. I'm looking at momentum underneath the candlesticks, and there's several charts that the momentum has been declining, and you can draw a straight line, but it's been making attempt after attempt. And I think it's going to break this downtrend line on some of these uranium charts. If you see the momentum break out before the price really does, well, that might be your buy signal.
Okay.
This is not financial
No,
advice.
please. You know, of course, it's not financial advice. I mean, you're not telling me, you're not managing my portfolio, but you are. You know,
Yeah.
you're putting food. I know, I understand that. Everybody just, yeah, I get it. So, thank you, though. I'm making a note of these things. So, but yeah, Liberty, what do you think as well? You know, I mean, I've been looking at some of these things, and it just seems like, you know, we've seen some volume declines here. I don't know. It's
Well, all the volume is selling.
yeah.
And all the volume is selling. You've got weak RSI, you've got divergences, you've got several failed breakouts. You look at UEC and NXE. These were once leaders in the space in terms of price prediction, and they have multiple failures to break out. They're hitting the same resistance over and over. And NextGen can't even get above its 200 on the daily. It is denied harshly every time it tries, and that's been the case since July. And this is not what you want to see on a breakout. I mean, you can't even get above your 200. You're denied every single time. That's bad luck, especially when you get this huge ramp in volume. Everybody's talking, well, look at all the volume. Yeah, well, all the volume is equated to long upper wicks on the weekly. This is a peekaboo. This is a failed breakout, right? It's like you need something to change quite dramatically for this to look bullish. Right now, I have very, very negative bias towards it. In fact, if you can get another random out of the blue 10% up day, I'm selling the hell out of it because it ain't gonna last. I mean, unless something really changes on these technicals, I don't see it. It looks weak to me. I think this is a failed breakout.
What about longer term? You can't really tell.
Well, you know, longer term, I love uranium, right? And anytime we get to weakness like we are, say, in gold and silver, like this is obviously a prime time to start accumulating. You know, just like I've been doing in the past, you get to these strong trends, and you know, and it's oversold. The technicals are telling you that it's, you know, being accumulated. Then join in and accumulate. Absolutely, I think uranium is one of the best long-term plays for sure. I love uranium. I love uranium. I want to be here for the long run, but I don't want to just diamond hands 40% down. That's stupid to me. So I'm not gonna do that. When I see weakness like this building on the backdrop of broad market weakness too, I think let me switch over to the S&P here. Yeah, the ES has lost its little short-term support. It's early still. You know, it's actually technically oversold. It probably needs a small little bounce here, but it lost its technical. You know, I just don't want to play around with it. It looks like it's going to sell off to me. I mean, look, Cameco, look, if you've watched my videos, Cameco and kind of Global stood alone from the pack. I mean, you have a lot of mixed signals in the space, and you have some clear weak signals in a lot of these names like UEC and NextGen, right? Cameco really looked actually quite good, especially on the weekly. But even now, it's starting to put in some ugly patterns too. It's starting to put in some ugly signals and ugly candles, mostly selling. So it's ramping up. It's getting denied. It's being sold down. It looks like distribution to me, and this is the common theme in uranium. I love uranium because it usually tells its hand. Right? It's very easy to get a good read of it on a technical chart. It makes it fairly easy to predict. And, you know, it's been given mixed signals for the first time in the last couple of weeks here, you know, since like March. And it broke confluence. You had some obvious standouts and some obvious weakness. And now even Cameco is starting to kind of roll over. So, no, it doesn't look good.
Alex, I thought we were getting confluence. What is confluence? Jesus.
It's already been defined. We're moving on, right?
Anyway, yes, exactly. I think, you know, from my perspective, again, I operate purely on intuition. It has seemed to me like there has just it's a little bit of I don't know what to do here. Like I said, we are, you know, you look at that and you see these higher prices being denied here. it does kind of feel like I'm not sure what to do. So I don't know. I mean,
So,
it's
so I'd like to add one thing. I've been tracking again a lot of the U.S. miners, and I saw a change in behavior last week. And I felt like some of these stocks got smacked down intentionally. Like when we had some of these big down days, like you're talking about, when Cameco had that 8% down day. I saw this on multiple stocks, and the computers and the algos returned where they hadn't been in the stocks for a few weeks, or even a month or two. And I started seeing a lot of dark pool trading, because I run quote stream as well, and I'll see a lot of K transactions throughout the screen. Anytime I see a K, that's a dark pool. And these are people with deep pockets that are moving money back and forth, that are not being readily shown on the exchanges. I started thinking personally, they're jacking with the stock, going through an accumulation phase, getting what they want. When they get their fill, they'll take their foot off her neck and let it roll. So far, it's looked like that to me, because you're getting these mixed signals. But when I started seeing it, it was these dark pool trades, and seeing these big brokerage houses coming in where they hadn't been before. The big U.S. players, and the U.S. players on the Canadian side. So I would look at order flow and who's doing the trades, and how the trades are being run, and how much are being like algo and bots style trades, because that tells a lot. And these guys the biggest of the big boys never really play fair, and they'll try and paint charts certain ways, or they go out there and give poor recommendations. I.e. Goldman is famous for this, telling you to sell, and they're out there buying your sell. So, be mindful that there's a lot of big
this
trading going on, that are big players in there right now that weren't in the stocks for the last few months.
This
It wouldn't
100%
surprise me to see.
this. Oh my God. Let me just echo that one more time. I know. I'm sorry. People, you have to understand, like, when people are, when you have like the big names in this space, or whoever else, or even if there's like bearish news or bullish news or whatever it is that's going to come out of like some recent news.
You're really choppy right now.
Oh, it's me. Sorry. Am I better now?
Choppy.
Oh, sheesh. Look, I would say that when people are in this space, or you say like some of the bigger players or whoever else, like, they will tell you maybe what they want you to do after they have done whatever they want to have had happened. So for instance, I mean, nobody is going to tell you to buy a stock before they've bought it themselves, or perhaps, tell you to buy a stock, before maybe they'll tell you to buy the stock and then they'll go buy some puts on it or something. Or however else it happens. I mean, you have to realize that everybody else is a counterparty, and I include that everybody else in here. I the way I define a friend in this business is someone that comes to me and tells me that they either bought or sold something like right after they did something, and but I don't expect anyone to ever say to me like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go buy this stock, before they buy it, or I'm going to go sell this, before they sell it. Nobody does that. And I don't expect anybody to. So I think just
Silver Chartist does that though.
Well, good for him, I guess, or good for them. But I mean, I just don't see that. I don't see that as very often, nobody gives away alpha for free, in other words. So, but yes, I'm sorry. Continue, everyone.
So Jabroni, I invited you back up. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm impressed you guys are still going.
This is marathon land right here.
I was blown away. I was like, man, you guys are still in here.
Okay,
but
We're gonna end this space here fairly soon. I swear we're not going.
That's what I was gonna say. I'm like, I probably am the death knell for this space once I say
Well,
that.
I
But
said, hey, Alex, what do you think about closing the space out
Yeah.
about an hour ago? And Alex was supposed to say something kind of bullish, and we have fun here. So
no, I mean it's good. You guys have a lot of. I mean, I don't know. I know it's different for everyone, but I have quite a few spaces concurrently going at the same time on my thing, and you guys are holding strong. It's pretty impressive that you have a steady listenership. I'm sure people are coming and going, but usually they tail off after a little bit of time. You guys have held a fair number of people, but I think that's good. It's a good sign. At least steady community. And like I said before, I mean, everyone here I think is very early. I think everybody in this trade is very early still. So we're all. I will say this. How about this? Let me expand a little bit rather than just giving a synopsis. I do think this is something I've been worried about. I know you were mentioning it earlier in the night, but I do very much get concerned with how uranium fits into the greater kind of like macro environment. And like when you see these announcements for certain 150 new reactors in China, or like was it South Korea with, they were saying like they wanted like another 23 or something like that. um I don't know how much I buy if we go into a real serious financial crisis, how many of these will actually see completion. So like, that's something that really worries me, and the fact that, until we have like a proven SMR model, these big reactors are so capex intensive. They take so long to build. Um, and then you add in the possibility of like a recession or even a depression. I just feel like there's a lot of things that that you could easily make a bear case for, and so there are good reasons to be cautious. Um, and that's why I don't go all in uranium. I mean, I have a heavy investment in it, but I think the thing is, if you're all in any trade, man, like that's a huge mental weight, and I don't think it's good for anybody. So that's my read on this for anyone who is getting a little too bullish. Let's just say, kind of find reasons to question that, because I just got done reading a few articles that are all bear porn, and I'm like, oh no.
So, just to add to what you're saying, in a normal situation when it's just businesses dealing with the business cycle, I would agree with you. But what we have is a world that's short of oil and a world that's short of natural gas by design. Like government's restricting the mining, the exploration and production of these things. And what you also have is state-owned entities that are really the drivers of these nuclear platforms, like Rosatom, CGN, CNNC. India, Saudi Arabia's own state-owned operations. Saudi Arabia's got the oil; they're going to get money no matter what. Russia's got a great balance sheet. China's in ascendancy, and they've got huge metal reserves. But Russia and China, they can print their own money.
Well,
So
I agree
these
with some
guys
of what you're
will get
saying.
those built.
I think it's a zigzag, like it for sure. But things like, I don't know how familiar you are with Zion, but like the demographics of some of these countries, most countries really are terrible, and that's pretty deflationary over the and you're warring against deglobalization, which is inflationary. So there's these tug of war, like macro trends going on. But if you see a collapse in China, which the more I read into it, the more likely it is that they just fracture because of demographics and whatever. I mean, if you have just China alone, if they collapse, I mean, man, that takes a huge bite out of a lot of the commodity trades. Um, and I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but like they're looking at some of these estimates by next 10 years, and it's scary. Um,
Well, the
I just
beautiful part is I'm not going to be in uranium in 10 month trade for me going forward. So I just know that when times get tough, people pay their car note and people pay their electric bill. That kids don't want to deal with without Wi-Fi. You want to heat your food. You want to stay warm in the wintertime. You want to watch TV because you got no money to go anywhere else. You know, even if a certain part of the population drops off and can't afford their electricity bills, that's still a bill that gets paid. They're not going to go out to Applebee's and go out to eat on Friday night, but you're more likely to get your electricity bill paid, and it's just going to be more inelastic. So one of the main reasons I got into this in 2019 was because of that and the economic cycle. I thought the market should have burned down in 2018 and stayed down. Off to the nat gas plant.
Sure, I can see that.
Iron Wang, join in.
Oh, that's what I just wanted to add as well. Like, look, if China collapses, uranium's the last thing I'm worried about. It's going to affect multitude of aspects of investing. So, you know, if that happens, it's doomsday anyway. But look, with all these other build outs, just that state of, you know, it's expensive, huge capex and long lead times with reactors. It is, but I would say that a lot of these other countries got it down pat. You know, you go look at certain build times and, you know, the averages, et cetera, et cetera. Look, basically China can pump these reactors out in around 5 years from when they start laying concrete. And the more reactors you're building, the more experience there is in that build out. And if you're doing multitude of reactors, I think where is it, the UAE, the South Koreans there, you know, it's 10 years for the first reactor, but the second, third reactor take a year and another year after that. So you're getting 3 reactors in 13 years instead of, you know, over, you know, 30-year period, let's say. So again, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about nuclear build-outs, and there's been a strangulation in the West with regulation and permitting to get these things off the ground. And this is what's blown out the time frame and the expenses got to do with it. So, you know, these other countries outside the OECD, they're going to be pumping out these things. And I do truly believe China will build that 150 reactors and potentially even more. As this energy crisis does really take a hit, I think you're going to see China throwing even more money at it. And other countries as well in the next, you know, 5 to 6 years. I think you get more nuclear build-outs, not less. So, look, it's just that in the West, yeah, it's fucked. Trying to get a reactor built in the US or trying to get one in Canada or Australia or anywhere like that, good luck. But the rest of the world, everyone wants energy growth. This whole demand destruction, you know, story, I believe is just a falsehood. As Eric was saying, people pay their energy bills, but people want more energy. And there's so many people out there in those other countries, China, India, etc., who don't have access to it, who demand it. So, you know, the energy thesis within itself is just astounding. And tie that into uranium, and that's why I'm invested and probably a lot of other people are. But I don't see that happening. Look, again, the biggest risk, and Lobo has been saying this forever, is a nuclear incident. It's a low chance, but it can happen. And that will destroy all our investments. And we are at a stage now that it's probably the riskiest ever been for a nuclear incident since Fukushima. With, you know, the plant in Ukraine, it's risky. That could, if something happens tomorrow, good luck with all uranium shares. So there are risks out there, but the energy demand destruction risk, I believe it's false.
That's interesting to consider. I mean, you could see quite a few number of geopolitical rivals who would have a lot of interest in causing something like that.
Well, no, I would go back and look. The Russians definitely don't want a nuclear accident because of Rosatom and them building reactors. China doesn't want to cause that because they're building a ton of reactors, right? And they're in the business of trying to export that as well. You know, when you see with the Ukraine, I saw BS headlines on Twitter that the Russians shelled. Why would the Russians shell something they already occupy? And
Well, what if you had like someone like somebody like, so it's well known that Russia or China have been funding green groups for decades to basically hamstring nuclear power. Why would you not see a state actor like Russian or Chinese intelligence set off something like that, specifically knowing that they have the policy making kind of simplicity to continue to push for those technologies, but knowing it's going to destroy any appetite among the West going forward?
because you want to kill Westinghouse, you don't want to kill the industry.
No, but they like
Westinghouse is
if they
pretty good at
feel
killing
like they could
themselves.
destroy any competition.
No, that's what I'm
would
saying. You sponsor the money with the Greens. They sit there and make it impossible for companies like Westinghouse to build reactors. You eliminate the competition that way, as opposed to turning everyone off, saying, "I don't want this in my backyard."
Yeah, but I'm saying like for China, they don't really care. Like who's gonna push back domestically in China and say no, we don't want that? Like
Yeah, but China was going to Africa and everywhere else to build reactors for them, and they
Yeah,
don't
I
want to
get
lose
that.
customers down there.
Ask you this one question, Jabroni. How many pounds of uranium were mined in the US last year?
I couldn't even tell you. I mean, not much. I mean, it's
Zero.
very
Basically
minimal if there's
zero.
anything at
Yeah.
all. I think there's a few
Basically
mines.
zero. So the point is, what are they going to destroy? No one's building reactors in the West. We're not even fucking mining this stuff. So for them it just seems counterproductive still, because they do still have like large uranium industries. So the industry is already destroyed. It's been destroyed. That green funding you were mentioning over the past 20 years has already destroyed it. So there's no real point to do a nuclear incident to try to destroy, nuclear in the West again. They've already done it.
Well, it can come back though. It's not like a static. It'll never be possible to, we're seeing it now. That's why we're in this trade. We think that this is turning around. So
you're seeing those BRICS countries, and seeing those other countries. You're not seeing build outs suddenly, from the US saying we're going to build 50 new reactors. Where all the West is focused on is SMRs. And they've pushed that out to 2030. Yeah, we're worried about that, and that's what we want to do.
And that's what
that's what Western nations are doing.
And that's where the fuel
So,
cycle
again,
focus is as well.
Whether they destroy it maybe before the SMRs come out in 2030 plus, I would say plus on that. That's another story. But something recently, I just don't see it because it benefits no one.
The Chinese and the Russians have already won the war on the 1 gigawatt plus reactor category. They can build them faster and cheaper than we can. That's all that matters. And for us, we went to the SMR route because we still have leading technology on that side.
it's interesting to consider. I'm just saying. I don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah, and not only, well.
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and it's worth challenging and thinking about these risks and things. It really does.
Well, not only that, but also on the SMR side of things, you can crank them out quicker because essentially you can just put them on a factory line. I'm actually I can give everybody a preview of my speech that I'm gonna give in Canada on this, and basically the title of the talk is going to be called "The Imperative of Conviction." And I know that's it's kind of a lame ass title, but whatever. I'm a big person. I'm a big believer in conviction. Like conviction will, conviction is the one thing that has upgraded energy fuels for me from just a total shit go to a company that I'm actually watching. And that's just because Mark Chalmers has a lot of conviction to mine uranium. So you know what? That's important to me. I mean, so having said all that, the thing that I was going to say to them was the year is 2042, and the 1,000th 100 megawatt class, I was going to call them climbers or Canadian light water modular reactor. So yeah, in spirit of can do, which I thought was cute, but whatever, is coming off the assembly line at the Toronto Atomic Power Energy, whatever the hell company thing we're gonna call it. This was obviously gonna sound a little bit nicer, more concise in the speech. And with that, we will have added nearly 1,000 gigawatts of clean, or something like that. That'd be right. So it'd be the 1,100 megawatt. Yeah, so they're about so many gigawatts of power off of nuclear. And to say that, to ask the people the question, like, we are getting now our power, 70% of our electricity in the OECD, particularly in Canada, the United States, from nuclear. And I'm going to ask them the question. It's like, does any of you in this room actually believe that that's possible? Because if it's not possible, then you need to make it possible. And you have to start thinking how to make it possible. And you have to start, stop begging for crumbs at the table and start, demanding what needs to be done. So I don't know how people think about that. But that's sort of one line that I was thinking about going on lines. So
Question for you, Chappie, about SMRs.
Sure.
Has any Western SMR been actually tested yet?
Sure.
Created, tested, and proven?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
they've been operating
have the Chinese also not already done that as well?
We've been operating SMRs for decades.
No. I'm talking modular. Like, yes, we've been using small reactors and subs and stuff. I understand.
They're the same
size.
Advanced
reactors with HALEU.
Yeah.
They're not using HALEU on those subs.
They use a much higher enrichment. Yes, that's true.
But that's what I'm saying. These advanced modular reactors, how many have been tested and used?
Well, because
everything I see is plants. So it's all fucking architecture and plants.
The challenge here is not necessarily the physics, but the means by which you can actually produce them quickly. So, in terms of like saying like how many have been tested, well, I mean, we've operated, if anything, we're actually sort of going back from we're sort of going back to the beginning in a lot of ways. So you take General Electric Hitachi's BWX 300. Well, you can go back and you can say like, well, yeah, we had the experimental boiling water reactor. It had about the same power output, as I recall. So if anything, we're sort of just starting over again, and we're kind of just relearning how to build these things. Now, maybe we will continue with the smaller designs, or maybe these designs will be made into larger designs. I don't know. I think that we should stick with small. I think my message to most of these people in Canada will be that, the Climber 300 or the Climber 100 megawatt reactors, they're not the most efficient. They're not the most technologically advanced, but they're robust, they're reliable, and they're cheap to manufacture. And as such, they have taken a dominant market position. And to the point that I'm just trying to say to them is like, stop trying to reinvent the damn wheel. We know how to do this, honestly. These are not, this is not beyond our physics. If anything, it's actually regressing a little bit in the physics. And, we have the means to do that. It's just a matter of will. And, but, we are getting there as far as like the actual tests go, or scale models. I don't think there would be a problem though, because the thing is that you're running these things at such lower outputs. And when you don't have as much heat as you have to dissipate, these become a bit more, I mean, when you don't even have to have like.
Good luck. How are they going to get a permit to place it next to your house?
I'll go out and I'll tell them they can do it. I mean, but
but you know what I mean. Like,
I will say
they haven't actually built it yet.
I will say the NRC has relaxed the rules as far as where these things can even be considered to be placed. So you can now place these reactors much closer to population centers now, if they're of the smaller design types, like the new scale reactors as well. Yes, we are going way too slowly on this. I am in complete agreement with you. But at the same time, these are sort of something that where if you can get the first one going and it's a success, and you can build it on time and on budget, even if it's, expensive, as long as you can build it on time and on budget, I think that can get the ball rolling. Because and then you have the opportunity for a true sort of a nuclear renaissance. But I don't think that's going to happen in the West until you have a good example of where the technology is going. So, again, yes.
Well, it's just about challenging that thesis that the West is superior with SMR technology. You can Google China SMR and you see that they've plugged one in December last year to the grid. So I just challenge that notion. We don't know what the Chinese are doing. We really don't. To a certain extent, like their R&D. I'm sure that's hugely classified. But I just challenge the notion that the West is just ahead on SMRs and they're going to dominate the market.
Well, yes, I mean, I would agree with you there. That the West will dominate the market, and that the West has the most money to spend on them in a lot of ways. In terms of who's actually the most advanced in terms of reactor designs, it's probably the Russians at this point. They have stuck with designs, and they're probably going to have, I think, even potentially the first commercial fast reactor. They've stuck with it. I know, and long after we basically shut down our fast reactor program, unfortunately. So there's a lot of engineering know-how in the West. I know there's a lot of very smart people. I work with them who are, very intelligent, and they're ready to, rise up to these challenges. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it is a real problem that, we necessarily, I don't think we have, I think it is some hubris, honestly, that, and I think a lot of that thinking that you're talking about there of of the West being, of claiming this mantle of having a leadership position in the SMRs is a little bit putting the cart before the horse. I think it's dangerous thinking, in that you can be lulled into a sense of, false security. So.
No, thanks for that. And very interesting about the fast reactors in Russia as well.
Yeah, you can look them up. I mean, they're pretty interesting. Yeah. I mean, they have them online now, so
You got to look at just the uranium mining industry as well. Like we've had a brain drain of nuclear industry in general in the West for a long time. A lot of engineers didn't want to get into it. And things like this, like young engineers, it's really hard to really build out institutional knowledge in these industries. And that's where, somewhere like Russia, where they haven't really had that massive downturn within the industry sector of it is hugely beneficial. And it's going to take the West years, like 5, 10 plus years to really start building up that,
yeah, I would agree. I mean, and we're seeing the same thing in petroleum engineers as well. It's actually in some ways, not to turn this into a calm space, but frankly, even more alarming, simply because, if you need mobile energy, or energy, just say, that can transport well, it's oil and gas. And there has been a huge decline, from my understanding, in petroleum engineers. That they just do not want to go. Nobody wants to go, and no one wants to. So be, no, everyone hates oil now for some stupid reason. But
Got to check. If you're a 22-year-old engineering graduate and you're thinking about your career, are you going to go into an industry you've been told for the past 10 years is going to die?
Exactly.
And it's going.
Yeah.
Why?
Or are you going to go make pinwheels for adults? Because that's what they all want to do now. God help us all.
All right, one last bullish case. Right?
Yes.
So essentially, one of my favorite traders is North Star Charts. and he's like he's like the biggest bull of all. I mean, he shows everything going to all time highs, and it might not happen, might happen, but I mean, if he's right, that's what I'm betting on. So I'm betting on something like that. He's called Bitcoin like amazingly. I mean, up and down both ways. Him and Patrick Kareem at Bad Charts. That's what I'm following. That's part of my thesis. My personal thesis is, what if they're right? And if you have 15-20% of your net worth in this could be where you get a big old win, life-changing wins. So we'll know in about a year and a half, 2 years or so, and that's the thesis. I mean, if this doesn't play out in 2 years, then on to something else. But yeah, I mean, he has pretty much most of these things going like up to their all-time highs, back to their all-time highs. So I don't. He has his own videos, his own things, and his paid web service. But yeah, he's always looking at evidence on the charts. So that's what he's looking at, and he thinks uranium's just going to go crazy. So we will see. But
And
that's how
guys,
I'm betting.
yeah, and don't forget. I mean, Kraken Energy, they had a volume spike today too, and they were up 11.11%. I mean, that's got to mean something.
Who's winning the fantasy thing, or who's doing well?
Jeez. All right, yeah, we'll close this out with a fantasy update, everyone. Though before somebody says that I shouldn't be involved in this because I'm all cash and doesn't count, well, just hush.
This is the practice one.
Yes, this is the practice one anyway. Jeez. So let's see here. Opening up. Right now, Patrick's in first place. Joker's in second. Alex is in third place. Congratulations. I'm in fourth place. What the hell? This is ridiculous. Oh, man. Mostly because Paladin is on an absolute tear right now. As well as Boss, as well as Global, as well as... Jeez, this is gonna make me feel bad. See, fine. All right, whatever. Whatever people that want to make fun of me,
The animal spirits on my team, the animal spirits are what's with me.
Sheesh. But yeah, Alex, you're up 25% on Kraken. And what is it? Fission? FUU?
Yep, has one of the best tickers.
Yep, FUU up 26.32%. So yeah, so far so good. Everybody's in the green right now. Yeah. But anywho, so beyond under that we've got Robin, and then the computer player is smack dab right in the middle. So which is the sign I think of a not an all that bad market. At least it's not, at least we're not all losing to the computer player again. But anyway, after that we've got Liberty, then Uranium Cranium, Iron Wang, and then Austin. So
yeah, seems like a good place to wrap it up. So I guess we'll.
Yeah, Austin, I'm afraid you're in last place. Oh well.
When does it end again, though? When does it end?
I think we're ending this towards the end of October, right? Because that would be the end of, I think what would be the end of third quarter? About?
It was a practice run.
Yeah, it's a practice run anyway. Yeah. We're gonna put money on the next round. So.
Oh yeah.
So yeah. I just want everything to go back to at a low level before that happens. We can all pick the best fundamental performance, hopefully. Of course, we all know that Alex is going to come in and he's going to find another Kraken Energy and all of a sudden just blow us all out of the water. So, but anyway. All right. Well, with all that said, I think we'll close it out here for the night. We're actually at about 11:30. So this is, I think, a good place to end it. Sorry if we didn't get into everybody's questions, but again, we'll be here next Tuesday. I think we're gonna continue on with this time. Hopefully.
Oh yeah, I need to let you know that I can only do every other Tuesday.
Every other Tuesday. Okay. Well, then I'm gonna have to find another co-host. So
Austin's pretty good.
for next Tuesday. I mean, obviously we'll rotate. You know, you're not here. So, but anyway. So, but yeah. All right. Well, good night, everyone. So glad everybody came, and thanks, Eric. Thanks, Liberty. Thanks, Austin. Thank you, Iron Wang. Thank you, Uranium. Anybody else who, I'm sorry if I forgot to mention all the speakers, but yes, thank you once again. See you around, and best of luck. Hopefully everything happens the way everything people want it to happen. So, but anyway, good night, everyone.